quick one, and this one goes out to our good friend Joe Lewis, who was so kind as to help us out. In New Jersey, A246, which I believe is a bill, would authorize county, aka community colleges, of which they have 18, to establish and operate student dormitories, including dining and other incidental facilities for use by students in attendance, along with other associated fees. As the push for free or reduced community college grows as a popular policy prescription, would dorms and other facilities hinder progress of the free model, or could this be a new way to foster growth and popularity in county/community colleges? So we'll start with Joe Lewis. Again, this was his topic. I'm really curious as to what he has to say about this. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is interesting for me because I feel like it's a good policy prescription, and it can increase like the growth and popular. Oh my goodness, I'm falling apart. Increase the growth and popularity of community college. But I think the institution in its current state is going to lead to a lot of consequences that hopefully like we can probably talk about tonight, because some of them are very like visible. One of which being like what is free now. Because even when we look at the cost of just that we're clear, Jersey is very expensive, especially to board at colleges and universities. You could be spending anywhere from 20,000 and upwards, depending on where you're at. And different costs come to that. Now there is like obviously some good things on its face, right? The turning like the the creation and cultivation of community building at the college level. That's all. It's like an all well and good thing. But I'm very curious to people's thoughts on this because there are a lot of, I would argue, very good arguments on both sides of this coin for and against. I think maybe there's something in the middle that's a bit more truthful. Personally, if I had to take a take and not be too kind of nebulous, I think that you would probably have to abolish community colleges as they currently are and then build them from the ground up in order to have not only like the like the free college and to the free community college argument and like policy prescription, I should say, along with the dormitory policy prescription, I think. But I'm more than happy to be convinced otherwise, which is why I posed the question.
Lee, man.
Yeah, so I got a lot of mixed opinions towards this. So I think that free community college is a good ideal because if you have a community college degree, you are far more likely to move up the economic ladder than if you don't have a community college degree. I think far more so than university and far more so than obviously if you just skate by with a high school degree. So what, be it that or like some kind of public like insurance plan for people who are maybe below a certain income ladder or something like that for community college. I love stuff like that, but I think if you were to do that, you'd probably have to cut some of the more luxurious elements of it. Maybe not dorms, but certainly stuff like maybe like the whole like dining hall thing that they were talking about in the policy that Joe Lewis brought up. So but overall, like I think it's a good ideal for the reasons that I just listed. So yeah.
Okay. And Biggs, everyone's gonna. This is just introduction, so everyone's gonna get a chance. Don't worry. Counterpoints.
Yeah, so my problem with lefties is I always try to come their fucking way a little bit, and then they move the goddamn ball, okay? So I'm just trying to fight for fucking free goddamn tuition, and you motherfuckers are like, nah, I want my fucking room and board paid for too. And it's like, Jesus Christ, I'm trying to convince boomers that fucking like Walmart employees deserve a decent education. Can we just like focus on getting the tuition fucking subsidized first? And on top of that, like abolishing and rebuilding, no, we have to work with it. You have to bear in mind, like, the structures that we deal with at the federal level, at the state level, I'm actually about to go talk to a state representative in a couple of weeks. We have to think about moving the fucking ball a yard at a time. And moving the ball at a yard at a time is basically Biden forgiving student loan debt, introducing the seeds of why the fuck do we even charge people exorbitant rates for college in the fucking first place? And then how much does it actually cost, which we'll talk about in the general fucking panel. And like, Destiny brought this up, which was basically like oftentimes a free or subsidized education or a free or subsidized service is actually not the thing that's denying people. oftentimes it's the ability that they have to work while trying to access this stuff. So it's like cost of living that's prohibiting them from taking advantage of the free thing. But we also have to deal within the realm of like modern economics and goddamn, like give a mouse a fucking cookie, he's going to want a glass of milk. So yeah, I'll leave it there, and I'm excited to get into the general.
I'm excited too because I wasn't sure this would be very contentious, but I'm wrong. I'm happy I am.
I got you.
Yeah, I didn't know lefties wanted a bunch of luxuries from college. That's new. That's a new thing I've heard. So.
What don't we want, right? Look.
Yeah, you greedy motherfuckers. Like
soon enough we'll be demanding a space in conservatives' houses, right? Like, well, of course.
Yeah.
Oh no.
It's like
you're welcome here, but you're gonna fucking work.
Community housing is
We
what
love-
we'll be doing, right? And your housing in particular. But thank you. All right, Hans.
Yeah, I'm gonna take your car.
If you're driving it to your job, I don't give a shit. That's fine.
Great. Thank
If
you
you're
so much.
if you're a landowner, they'll take the whole house too.
Hans.
Thanks. So I'm not as fluent with this as someone say like as John Lewis, but I think there's a great capacity for our communities if we invest in them to have like this opportunity. And what Connor already brought up, I'm gonna throw an olive branch out to him, is that how we cover a lot of like those secondary effects of like room and board stuff. The easiest way we could do that is just make sure that once you graduate high school, you have the opportunity to go to college without having to live somewhere else. You can just keep living with your folks until 21, 22, and then that sort of stuff is kind of covered, or at the very least you're not need an entire new apartment for yourself or dorm living for that sort of stuff. So if we want to improve our communities, I think that's probably one of the easiest ways to do it. From again, reaching out to those centrist people, saying, oh, you want a strong American economy, you want a strong national, civic nationalism, sort of shit. One of the best ways is having a skilled population, and the easiest way to do that, as Layman said, is to make sure that more of us are more highly educated, more of us have better opportunities to go to school, whether it's trades, whether it's theater, like Maddie. I loved my theater classes in college. I'm not a theater major, but they were some of the most fun I've ever had. So obviously, there's a lot of things we can do that would make our country stronger. And for all my lefties out there, not abandoning you because I am a Mark suck at the end of the day, we will dramatically improve the lives of potentially millions of people by giving them the opportunities that they do not currently possess. So this is just the easiest win-win-win. The big thing I would just delve into is how are we going to make this happen? What we're willing to take now, versus what we want to push for later. So
I just want to clarify something, because you mentioned me, and when I'm saying community college, I'm thinking of vocational, so trades specifically. I'm not so much thinking about theater. No offense to the theater heads.
We can fight
Do
on
they
that.
not have? So
Okay.
it's kind of a different system. It might be different.
Yeah, we gotta do
intros,
intros.
asshole.
It's intros. I just
Oh,
cut
yeah,
in.
okay.
I derailed it. Sorry, everybody. I derailed it.
Way to go.
Biggs
Layman
is,
hates the arts.
Biggs is motherfucking waiting for his turn. Don't get in his way. Biggs, please.
Hey, everybody. I love you guys. Thank you. So my thinking is, I don't know about you, but the way I feel about community college is a cheaper way to get your 4-year degree. Now, I know this may be different for different fields, but that's my thinking. If I didn't personally do it, but I know a lot of my friends went to a community college for their first 2 years to really get the cheap extracurriculars out of the way, all their basic core classes in. Then they were able to transfer those to a 4-year degree and get their bachelor's. But my issue, what I have with this is, how are we going to pay for the infrastructure for this, building these dorms, building these facilities, and how are we going to do that? Is it going to be through the state? Is it going to be through the federal, and things like that? So that's my first question I had to Joe specifically, and we can get to that later. My second issue that I have is we've seen an incredible decline basically over the last decade, and it's actually accelerated obviously due to COVID, but the enrollment has steadily decreased since 2010, where we kind of had the peak college enrollment, and it's been steadily declining and kind of dropping off a cliff right now. So those are my two biggest things. How are we going to pay for this? And how are we going to actually be able to have the students that actually fill these dormitories and fill these facilities to actually make it a worthwhile endeavor? Now, granted, I'm all for education, but my thinking is I want to make community college free and make it so that we can have people go to get those first 2 years done, so they can get their 4-year degree and really actually make it a more educated life to start with. So that's my feeling.
Thanks so much. Tonsil.
Yeah, I don't know what the expense of all this will be. It seems like it's a pretty good idea in terms of getting people in close proximity. You can get more community cohesion in that way. I like that aspect of it. I like the fact that it probably leads to some amount of independence from one's home once they graduate high school and can go into college. It depends on how expensive it is, because it seems like community college is one of those things that you are doing kind of not full time in the same way as a university. Maybe this is just like my personal experience, but community college and versus my university experience were two very, very different things, even though it was the same level classes. So it doesn't seem like it is the same level of strenuous activity in terms of academic achievement. So I don't know how much time you actually need to spend on the campus, but on its face, it kind of seems like a pretty cool idea. But yeah, I want to hear what other people's opinions are on it first, because I don't really have a lot of information about it.
Maddie.
So I think, first of all, one thing I love about the junior college system is that they make higher education available to a large swath of people that maybe otherwise wouldn't think to go to college, whether it's for financial reasons, whether it's because they simply just don't know what they want to do. And so having that time to figure it out is valuable. And then maybe they transfer, maybe they don't. But I have a lot of friends who went through the junior college system, and I have nothing but great things to say about it. And along those same lines of essentially creating more equity in higher education, I think offering facilities like dorms could help to make it even more equitable, because the reality is that not every student can safely live at home. Not every student lives somewhere where they have easy access using public transit, or if they have their own personal transportation to get to their junior college. So in a sense, I think it would be a great idea to offer more of those types of facilities on junior college campuses. Now, whether it's available to all students, or maybe they have some sort of preferential program where it goes to, like, kids who come from low income households get preference because they're more likely to require that sort of thing. I think that's something that could be explored. And then along those, I know a lot of us are talking about costs. Well, how the hell are we going to pay for all this? Because I agree, when you look at how much college costs nowadays, we wonder, well, how much can we afford? Where are we going to get this money from? And the truth is that the federal government used to provide a lot more in terms of subsidies and funding for public universities, public colleges, public junior colleges, back as far as the 1960s, 1970s. And that has sort of steadily declined. They also, the reason you see tuitions go up is because the federal government passed a law, I believe it was in 1973, that essentially made it so that paying back student loans, you weren't protected by bankruptcy, you weren't protected by other things that you would otherwise be, like, you would still be on the hook to pay back your student loans, which is why colleges can just keep increasing tuitions. That's not actually directly correlated to increasing costs. They do it because they know they'll get paid, because the government will issue these loans and students will take them.
Okay. Thank you for that. Thank you
I
for,
know, I'm sorry.
as always, being brief. Thank you, Maddie. All right, Agent 10.
Yeah, so overall, I think this is probably a very bad idea. As a New Jersey resident and someone who does go to university here, I know how expensive it is. And for my university, which is the same as Joe Lewis, for example, he probably knows this. Our room and board is 14 grand, which is why you see me not in a dorm room, because fuck that. That's 2 grand more than in-state tuition for a full year. So it's kind of ridiculous. Take that money and, go get a house with friends or live at home if your situation can give you that. I feel not gonna, like, the whole point of community college is to be cheaper. So I don't really understand the whole idea of have community college start masquerading more as universities and get these certain dining programs and certain dorming programs attractive just to raise the price and get more money out of them, especially if the goal is to have eventually free community college, is a huge step back.
Okay, open to the panel. Really interesting.
Yeah. So
Context. Wait, real quick. Context. Okay.
Yeah, Joe Lewis and Agent
We
got
gotta
a
help.
fight.
We gotta
They're
help
from
these
New Jersey.
Canadians. We gotta help these Canadians. Okay, I understand some people want to just throw some shit across the border and hope it hits Trudeau. But, so basically, to give a very sort of like speed run of how community colleges work, and every state is going to have different types of guidelines and type of things. So take what I'm about to say like with a grain of salt, but with also just like context, like, oh, this might be different where I live.
Oh,
So
definitely.
basically, the purpose of community colleges, they serve two primary purposes. One is the vocational route and trade program route, and then the other is through certification programs. So both of those things coexist at the same time. So
Yep.
you'll have at the high school level vocational schools that feed into community colleges for an associate's degree or certification that leads into a certain field. That's a common IT route. Another thing is kind of like sort of under the rug is things like I think there's a word for the plumbing arts, but it's a thing.
Pipe
Where
trades, right?
what's that?
Pipe trades, is
Skilled-
that what it's
Yeah,
called?
like pipe trades or something. You just call
Because
it
in
plumbing service,
Canada,
but-
or at least where I live in Canada, I can't speak for the whole country, but it's basically like pipe fitting and plumbing are basically the same course. So
Yeah, and then also two nursing programs are in the certification route at the community college level. So you can go through an RN route, starting community college and ending somewhere. The problem is, and this is why I think this bill exists, is because you have a lot of transfer programs. What that looks like is community colleges make deals with other universities in order to like guarantee credits into those institutions. As an example, for God damn it. For Mercer County Community College, Soft Docks there, they have a deal with Temple University, which guarantees your credits transfer over to specific programs if you start at the community college level. A lot of universities do this. You might have situations like the, God damn it, what the fuck is it called? Republicans made it so I can't think of what it's called. The Student Transfer Achievement Reform Act. Whew, which basically makes it a guarantee that like if you go to this institution, it's guaranteed that when you go to this one, your credits are going to be like reflected no matter what.
okay.
One of the problems that I think and why this exists is that there isn't really any type of competition at the community college level. So what that looks like is if your community has a college, no pun intended, then like most of the people who feed into that area will go to that university when they or that community college. However,
Yeah.
there is disparities in terms of the quality of education across different community colleges, especially in New Jersey. As an example, the schools that are the representatives that are fronting this bill are representatives from the best community colleges in the state, specifically Mercer County Community College and Middlesex College in Essex County. So they have an invested interest in this because what they could do is create some type of like feeder system to lead into other colleges or universities. And that's where I think the long play is. Because you can't overtly be like, hey, can we use your dormitories for associate degree students? Because I think that would be a good middle ground, by the way, where extending associate degree programs to colleges and universities who already have the facilities in the first place. That solves the cost problem. It does increase the housing problem, and then you get the 4 years with all those peasants at the 2-year level. But it creates like an incentive to have students who start out at the 2-year, maybe they work up to end up into that university. It could be a good filter system. But basically, to circle back into the context of how it exists in the States is that currently dorms in community colleges are very rare. However, community colleges serve as vocational and trade program routes and as well as certification programs. And the certification programs includes associate degrees.
Yeah, that's why.
Sorry, buddy. You mind if I jump in? I want to give
Yeah,
people
go
fuel to
for
the
it.
fire.
Go for it.
So basically, like, I think what Agent 10 said is pretty smart. That basically, like, most people should, if they're facing financial stress, they should live at home or they should live with roommates because it's fairly inexpensive in the region. And that's also majority of the problem.
Yes.
That being said, there are exceptions to this rule. And I think the community college dorm actually presents an interesting solution, because I live in an affluent area and there's a lot of fuck ups here, a lot of rich fuck ups. Okay. And they were, despite being probably smart, they were lazy because their fucking parents were powerful and rich. So they didn't want to put in the effort in order to get into a high level state school. So these dorm programs should basically be targeted at two audiences. One, the super rich fuck ups who couldn't get in anywhere else. That way you could charge them exorbitant rates and basically subsidize the remainder of the program with it. And it should be targeted for the super poor, people who do not have the ability to go to college otherwise, who might not have access to transportation, who might not have access to adequate food. They might live in a food desert. They don't have the networks or the capability to go to college. And then that way you basically have a bunch of like rich fucking party boy assholes who are subsidizing poor kids who are just, basically getting the opportunity to be educated in the first place.
Not
What
to
that
cut
would
you
also
off,
do,
Connor. There's another that you missed.
well,
But
add them
we'll
in
get
there
yeah.
after the in there after this like 20-second thing. So what another good thing about that is you could basically end some of the social stratification where these two parts of society never interact. And what would actually happen is, let's say that we had a black sheep of the family that was kind of a fuck up, but then he went to community college, got his 4-year degree, ended up becoming a powerful person because he has powerful networks and all that kind of stuff. He also meets somebody from the wrong side of the tracks. Basically, if we develop a kinship or a friendship in the community college dormitories, then the kids who are coming from the wrong side of the tracks and have no connections, no access, no nothing, they now have a rich and powerful friend who's connected, who can basically help them get into the industries that they want to get into.
Okay.
Yield.
Counterpoints is drawing is giving the synopsis of his romance novel there. So thank you for that.
But the kid, but the rich and powerful person is black. The poor person is white.
Oh,
Okay.
twist.
There's a twist.
Real quick,
And the white guy says, "You don't know my struggle" in the middle of it.
I love it. I love it. Joe Lewis, 10 seconds. Yeah, I want to go to Biggs.
Yeah, another group that I got kind of pilled on, which really seems tantalizing to me, especially at the state level, are those individuals who want to go to particular schools but want to start at county first and then end up transferring there. So I could see a situation where if I wanted to go to University of Miami and I maybe didn't get accepted there or maybe even waitlisted, it's like, okay, well, why don't I go to, I think it's like University of Dade or Dade College. That's like maybe 20 minutes down the street from University of Miami. Go down there, get my education down there for the associates, and then apply for Miami for the 4-year. So I could definitely see a situation where you can go to community colleges that have dormitories to bring in additional income from outside the state. Because one of the most attracting things for every institution is the out of state money. That's where you really get fucked.
So
Well,
I was thinking of
Big. First of all, Joe Lewis, I will buy you a stopwatch for your birthday. Now I did promise Biggs. Please, Biggs.
Thank you. So my biggest hang up here is, like, to me, and I think we can all agree, and again, maybe Joe might be able to answer this more specifically for his ideals, but to me, like, the community college to me seemed like the cheap option to go to get your degree. And I feel like if we start adding costs to that, we're going to kind of negate what the whole premise of community college was for.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know what you guys think, but like in my town, we had a very small community college, but it was very, very well run, and it actually worked really well. It fed into Eastern Michigan University, Central Michigan University, and Western Michigan University, where I went to college. But it was very much that a place where people could go to get basically their first 2 years free, because they had a lot of opportunities for like scholarships through the like band and through other things and things like that. So I think we're kind of losing the forest through the trees, where we're trying to make these community colleges more like state colleges, when the whole point of them is to kind of be that stepping stone to the 4-year degrees. So that's just my take.
Yeah. When I was going to cut in earlier, I was going to sort of build off of something similar to that, where I was going to kind of say, like, we're talking about like all dorms and stuff like that. I think that if you were to make it free, You should probably get rid of all these other like luxuries, like the dining room area and all that stuff. Especially, and I don't think that would be a big loss because oftentimes at community colleges, when you're eating at those places, they're like way more fucking expensive than if you just brought your own food. So like, fuck that. Also, I'm going out of focus. Sorry to cut in, and now I'm back. So, I was gonna say like maybe.
I thought you were giving me a high five, man.
So, continuing where I left off, I would say that something that would be a little helpful is if maybe when it came to dorms, you could probably have maybe like, because like I totally agree with Agent when he said that people should live at home or get roommates if they fucking can, but maybe you could have dorms available, like if you wanted to cut costs to be able to afford free college or something like that, maybe something you could do is just reserve dorms specifically for people who do live, I'm gonna say out of province, because fuck America, out of province, and fuck you. So
hey, load up on some more poutine. Okay.
I think it's some sort of.
I
think it's some sort of eatery. It's from what I heard. But anyway. But finish your point.
Anyway, that's just something I wanted to throw out there. Someone disagrees.
Sansel, and
I'm not married to that position.
We're gonna go to Sansel, then Hans, then counterpoints. Okay. Oh, and then sorry,
so
Sansel, Hans, then Matty Cakes, and counterpoints.
Yeah. So this is just a couple of questions that I am thinking of while listening to this. So someone brought up not everyone can afford housing, or it's not always a situation in which they can stay with their parents after high school, et cetera, et cetera. Why does it have to be through the community college system? Why don't we just put the effort that we would put in for this, that we have dorms at community college, into affordable or free housing for low income individuals, so that they can, either get out of bad situations or just have affordable housing. And then the other question I have is, how many people are actually going to be using these dorms, and why? What's the actual draw of staying at your community college? Because if you have the opportunity to stay with your parents and not pay anything versus stay on the community college, which is in your community already, why would you do that? It just doesn't make much sense to me. So there has to be a reason why we do things, right? So those are just questions that
I reject that last premise. But
Yeah.
anyway.
Well, for what reason?
No,
I mean,
I know reason why we do things. I'm just joking around with you, buddy.
Gotcha.
Logic, reason, it's bad. Get rid of it.
But still, I think it's actually
Destroy
interesting, and I do actually disagree with you on the one thing, but I'll let other people go. Let's go, Hans.
I think, Sanso, like answering some of your questions, one of the easiest ways that we could potentially solve like that last bit about like making people more okay living with their parents is to like stop stigmatizing it. Like we've all seen like all the articles like, oh, like millennials are killing the housing industry. Like, like people are living with their parents later, and like that means this generation is lazy. And it's like, actually, it's probably just because the cost of housing is like really fucking high, and like no one wants to like buy houses. So it's like, so that's one way we could fix that. The second thing is, I think the part of the conversation about like how much like infrastructure you want to like spend on this, right? Because the idea is this is supposed to be like cost saving while at the same time providing like a massive like leaping point for like most of society, right? And so when we're talking about like how we want to like get these kids to go there without having to live in dorms, it's about like what parts of infrastructure do we have to build for this system? Because again, I'm not opposed to this. If we're just talking like in the most pragmatic way possible, like what do we absolutely need to make this like get off the ground versus what we don't need? And then so it seems like it's entirely possible that like you could say make it much easier for people to like go to colleges locally, and then like have maybe a small like dormitorium for people who are like struggling with their parents, or like don't have like safe housing elsewhere. Like there's ways we can fix that, but we should not make that the norm. And what we should probably try and normalize from a societal perspective, I know like some conservatives probably like that, like, oh, we'll just change the culture and that like will solve some like problems. But in this specific case, if you can make it easier and more normal to live with your parents into like your mid 20s, you're probably gonna have a much better time. We can essentially like cut off like a significant chunk of like the housing issue of this like right at the beginning. And then I would also say like I'd recommend to people another thing we can like do is like, again, encourage people to go to like these schools inside their communities. That's one way of like revitalizing communities that currently exist, right? Like some places dying, what might be able to make it like a bit more vibrant, having a thriving community college like existing there. Like, everything could be like a fun small college town, right? I don't think you should have to like go like multiple states over. Like I'm from Indiana, I went to school in Pennsylvania. there are not saying there aren't good schools in Indiana, but like I got a really great opportunity to like a better school. If we had more opportunities or more better schools, maybe I would have like, you know, stayed in my home state, right? There's plenty of things that could have happened that would have like fixed that for people. So when we're talking about this, it's really just like what we absolutely need for this to work, not trying to account for every potential eventuality for like every single person. I think we could probably we'll probably lose people in the margins that way. But if in terms of this will probably make a lot of the bean counters a lot like happier in terms of cost.
Okay, let's go to.
So who's actually for this? I haven't really got that. We at least get raise the hands for that. Who's for
Like,
it?
is someone for
yeah.
wait for what? Wait for what specifically? Because there's
For
a
the
lot to the bill.
dormitories and the food services type things. Who's actually
fuck
for it?
that.
I'm definitely.
And like a
But-
limited capacity like that I just described.
Let's go
Fuck
to.
that with a lot of caveats.
Let's go.
No caveats. Yeah, if you're not giving me any
Oh,
caveats.
man.
Well, I mean, if I'm not being served caviar, then I'm out. But
I know.
sorry,
I was
just
just
kidding.
having trouble, kind of like. I mean, everybody kind of had like, I like it, but so I wanted to kind of get like who.
That's the point. Like the butts are like what makes this tick, right? Like
Right, but it doesn't
Yeah.
make sense to me overall.
Let's make the
though,
world go around. I agree, but no. I'm for this about the caveats, but other would need to go first. Maddie, please. She's
Okay.
so elegant.
Sorry, I knew I was muted. I had to find where my Discord was. I have multiple windows open, so I was just like, fuck. Okay. So, yeah, one thing I really want to point out, because I know a point that people tend to get hung up on is the cost. So, how are we going to pay for this? Like, what? Like, the cost of colleges are already skyrocketing. Where the hell is this money going to come from? And one thing that is important to consider is that the reason that we see these tuitions for public schools hitting new highs all the time is because many state governments have cut operating support for higher education for at least a generation. This has started in the 1980s, even 1970s. And because of that, without those operating support and funding, they expect the students, and in many cases the students' parents, to make up for lost revenues with tuition hikes. So this is something that was formerly covered a lot more by state governments. So the federal government provides a certain amount of support to public universities. They also provide a ton of support in the way of Pell Grants and tuition loans and other things. But for many public universities, they rely almost entirely on a combination of tuition and state funding. The problem is that for many states, that has been one of the first things on the chopping block when they come to writing up a new annual budget. And then you see students having to make up the difference. So one way, when you say, well, how are we going to pay for it? I would advocate to have states reinstate a lot of the funding that used to be there. And then I actually like what Connor Points was saying, where it's like, for a lot of students who can afford to pay for the dorms, let's have people who can afford them subsidize it, because this is an equity issue. This is an issue about making higher education available and accessible to everyone. And for a lot of people, that it doesn't just mean providing them with a dorm. The cafeteria and having those kind of services are just as important. That's why in a lot of public schools, we provide them with school lunches, because for many kids who don't come from families where like a food on the table is going to be a guarantee, sometimes the only meal they get is at home, or that might prevent them from like seeking out higher education, because they're like, well, if I don't work, then I'm not going to be able to eat. So that
Maddie,
prevents. Yeah.
Sorry. No, sorry. You can.
No.
You can finish. Okay.
Yeah, I'm done. I'm just rambling.
No worries. The problem I have with like the additional, a problem I have with the additional luxuries is that, for one, they're not necessary, and for two, they're not provided to people for free. Like you wouldn't, like, when you go to a community college or a vocational school and you go to like a cafeteria at one of these schools, you're not getting like. I'm so sorry, Connor.
It's fine. You're triggering me, but it's okay.
I'm sorry.
Finish your point, then we'll go to counterpoints, and then Biggs.
Okay. It's just that my concern is like it doesn't seem like getting anything back. It seems like you're paying more for that luxury. That's my concern. Now, Connor, you
it's
can.
all-
You
I
can
would,
it's
would
a
argue that like what you're calling a luxury is absolutely necessary for a large number of kids, especially if they're from like a marginalized background or a background where like they come from a single parent household or like it's not safe for them to live at home. And so this is their way out. This is their way to get a higher education. So for those of us who come from a privileged background, it's not like we can say, oh, it's a luxury, but like for many kids, this could be the barrier for whether or not they are even able to pursue an education.
I'm not saying the education is the luxury. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying
not
that
either.
So like
okay. I'm just
kind
kind of confused.
So do you really think dorms is going to be the factor that's limiting people going to community colleges from these groups?
Do
Okay,
you
so
not?
I'm not talking about dorms
I
either.
don't.
Hold on.
It's like safe housing.
Sorry, let's go.
That's like important.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. My contention was with like the food thing, the like food luxuries. That was my contention.
So,
boy.
so later,
It wasn't with dorms or with
Let's go to counterpoints. And let's start off this conversation with the fact that apparently food is a luxury. Go ahead, counterpoints. And Hans, I see you.
Okay. You guys, I can tell, like, all right, so we got two libertarians or fiscal conservatives who are concerned with costs, and we have a bunch of fucking a bunch of fucking power hungry fucking socialists. I can tell because none of you guys are thinking about the potential capitalist boom that is here. All right. I was in the United States military. There were 20 rooms per wing. There were 4 wings, and each barracks was 4 stories tall. That was 160 people. If you were charging each one of these people $500 a month, you're actually like, I think you have a net income. Oh my God. I only made it to the month. You have a net income of $320,000. Or you have income of $320,000. Not only that, you could build this like a military barracks where it's literally just fucking cinder block, copper pipes, fucking fucking painted a shitty drab fucking tan. They can put their fucking they can put their rock posters on there. And on top of that, you're not even thinking about this. You making bunk beds. You can put 2 of these poor ass fucking college kids in the same room.
But doesn't charging them $500 kind of defeat the point here?
Connor?
No, it doesn't, because you can charge the rich kids $1,000 and you can charge the poor kids $500 a month.
Connor, this is an incredible idea. This is an incredible idea.
This is so much profit.
Hey, I have a question.
Fuck the food.
Sure.
I agree with you completely.
Can I ask a
and you could
question?
probably be able to afford the food. So now, Maddie, now I can agree with you about the food. Because if we do what Connor does, you can fund that fucking easily and make it cheaper. So fuck yeah. Connor and you have won
I
the
agree. Let's
conversation.
put our dicks in everything. Okay, Biggs.
Fuck yeah. Let's put our dicks in everything.
I said finger fuck. I did not say fuck.
Hold on a second, guys. Hold on.
I'm saying fuck.
I don't know where you guys are getting.
fuck.
No, listen. I don't know where you guys are getting this hypothetical people that are going to subsidize by going to a community fucking college to live in a dorm. People that are going to be able to afford that type of thing are going to go to a state college far away from their parents. They're not going to go to some community college like 20 minutes away from their home to live in a dorm when they have to like do that. They're not going to do it.
I literally live in one of the. I grew up in Silicon Valley, where it's all the kids of like spoiled ass like tech executives, whatever. So many of those kids were fuck ups and dumbasses, and like.
And they couldn't get into state school?
Still went to community college because
they couldn't get into state school because they were dumb?
And they 100% would have gone to the dorms. 100%.
Oh my God. Okay, please. Go ahead.
But if we're charging them $500 a month, why wouldn't they just, go and get an apartment with some friends at that point? I don't understand.
Are you serious?
You guys are making me
apartments are not
Same reason.
Are we gonna pretend roommates don't exist?
College students don't.
No, but still,
like, if you're gonna bunk bed in a cinder block like hellhole, you're gonna
fair enough.
College experience. It's part of like the mythology and ethos of like going to college. And you get a little slice of it.
Wait, hold on. Maybe I'm a dumb fuck. I thought that the point of this was that it was supposed to be free fucking things.
Counterpoints, finish whatever point you're going to make, and I'm going to go to Joe. All right.
Okay. Oh man. Okay, so Biggs asked me, are there this many stupid motherfuckers who couldn't get into the state school? The answer is unequivocally yes. Okay.
No, I'm
Hold on,
asking
hold
you.
on, hold on, hold on, hold on. I'm not done. I'll address your other. I'll address your other point. Don't worry about it. So and if I miss it, you can give it to me again. Okay. So basically, Florida State University, University of Florida, University of Central Florida. Those are the three big state schools in the state of Florida. UCF used to be the fucking safety school. I had a 1320 SAT back when 1600 was like the stat. And then I had like a 3.2 weighted GPA. And I applied to UCF after I came back from the military. They laughed me out of the fucking
Yeah,
building.
3.2 is low.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, I was trying to
just
finger fuck
saying.
people.
that
I
got
was trying to
into
finger
it.
fuck people and smoke pot. So, hey,
It's like-
forgive me.
So what I'm saying is, though,
hold
is
on,
the people
I'm
that can
starting my
afford
point.
it.
I'm not
SAT
don't yield.
is what I'm
I don't
saying.
yield.
Like,
I don't yield. So okay, so basically the question is, are there enough people to get the housing who are willing to pay $500 to $1,000 a month in order to go to these dorms? And the answer is rich kids, yes, absolutely. Poor kids, yes, absolutely. And the reason why Sonsel asked this question, why would people want to stay in dorms? Why would people want to stay in these like barracks housings or whatever? Is because if it's mixed gender, rather than staying in a fucking apartment complex, you are hanging out with 24/7 with electronics, with internet, with drugs, people your age, 18 to 22, and there's a small chance that some of those people want to finger fuck you, or you will
My
get to finger fuck
question
them.
is,
boy.
Degeneracy.
So, yes,
What
people
can
will
you
do
do
Wow.
that for cheaper?
Wow. Okay.
That's all I'm
Alright,
asking.
well,
Okay, fuck cheap. You're making profit off of this hand
You're
over
making
fist.
The whole
Yeah.
idea of community college.
don't
is
mention
cheap.
fists in this context, please. Anyway,
Okay,
but
fists. So fisting people with finances. Agent 10 said
That
we
costs
wanted to make this.
extra.
He said we wanted to make this process cheaper. The money does not have to come out of the tuition. The housing itself is not only self-sufficient, you have a profit. You can subsidize other students and you can subsidize their food expense. You keep talking about cost. You build a $320,000 to $500,000 building, you're making $320,000 a month. What cost? You are making money.
Okay, so here's my question. Can you do that at a point where you could get the people to not go to a state school? I agree that there are a lot of dumb fucks.
Yes, because
that
of
will go to
access.
that, but I
Because of
honestly,
access.
Ease of
Like,
access.
people can't get into state schools. The University
I
of
don't
Central.
believe, I think you're
Okay. I don't know what flyover state you're in, but in the state of Florida,
what's the
we're
acceptance
in the
rate?
third. We are in the in the state of Florida, acceptance rate is probably only 50-50, and it's the second largest institution in the country. The only college that is bigger than UCF is ASU, the Arizona State University, which is where Californians go to get herpes. So, like,
True.
basically, yeah.
I actually lived in Arizona. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm not surprised, but I'm not.
Not
that was,
anymore.
yeah, but I'm fucking around.
Jeez.
You're fine.
If I could finger fuck dumb Californians, I would. So, anyways,
Oh, fucking!
let,
I did not expect you to be the biggest
let's-
coomer tonight,
let's
dude. What
go-
the
We
heck?
try our hardest.
let-
Okay.
I'm a married man now, but I
Oh.
was a piece of shit when I was
Oh
younger.
boy.
all right?
Oh
What?
man. Let's go to Joe
Yeah.
Lewis and then Hans, and let's try to get control of this situation. Joe.
No control.
Yeah. So some of the thank me, Prime. This topic is fire. So
It is.
one of the things that I think that maybe Connor is knocking at. I tried to say it in my opening, so I guess I'll be a bit more like overt about it, right? So one thing that I think adding dorms to community colleges could do is create incentives for those to travel to these states and start at the community college level to work into an Arizona, into an Arizona state. Like, I'll give you an Arizona example, right? Like, less than 5 miles from Arizona State University is Mesa Community College. It is literally 2 turns to make it there, right? So something that you could do is incentivize by having housing there, and it's like, hey, I know you wanted to go to Arizona State University, but your grades aren't quite there yet. But how about this? Let me give you this proposal. We will accept you into Mesa Community College. You start there for 2 to 3 years with your program. And since we have a deal with Arizona State University, once you're done at Mesa Community College, you just got to do a couple turns and you're right there at Arizona State University. So you're within the ecosystem of that school that you want to go to. And you don't have to consider second and third choices for the university that you go to. Now, what that looks like, and this is where things can get really competitive, is what incentives does Mesa Community College have in order for people to go to eventually go there, to go to a university like Arizona State? And this is where I think the additional incentives come. And this is where also at the same time, I'm sure Connor might bring this up, is that there's a point where when does a community college stop being a community college, and why isn't the universities just doing this in the first place? Because one sort of counter argument I have is that, or like a counter to this argument, to the proposition that Jersey's running into, why don't the state schools just offer associate degree programs with all the other bells and whistles that come with coming to university? So like you can get accepted into an associate's degree program and they say, hey, after 2 to 3 years, if your grades are good enough, then you welcome to Arizona State. And if you don't, you can still get your associates and that's okay. So you have 2 levels of a degree program there. However, something that you could do with if the Mesa County Community College, the Mesa Community College example, you could start at Mesa and maybe you want to go to another school in Arizona. Cool. Mesa County Community College has deals with all other universities within the area. So pick the school you want to go to. You're still in the Arizona ecosystem. So you're not like doing this massive transition. You might even Arizona and other schools might compete with Mesa in order to filter to see like,
Joe.
oh, you go here or here instead. Like,
Joe, you
Let's-
haven't even thought about the best part yet. You haven't even thought about the best part yet. Guess when residency kicks in? After 2 years. Not only do you go to the community college for cheaper, not only are you guaranteed to the admission of the school that you want to go to, not only do you get to finger fuck people while you're getting drunk in your community college, but then on top of that, when you're going to the 4-year state school, you now have in-state tuition instead of out-of-state tuition.
Yes.
You're still making money if your parents are rich as shit and they're sending their black sheep, dumb fuck children to schools that they get to save money on. This is fucking genius.
And that's why, like, I think that at scale, right? If this was scaled up at
Be right back.
just the national level, where like other states were to do this, it could really change the game of how people look at certain states when it comes to the colleges and universities there. Where right now, for some people, like using like when I went to King University, which is in Union, I had no reason to go to Union County College, despite the fact it's in the same township. I just went to Mercer instead. Now, if there was something that's like, hey, I really want to go to Kane, but I don't think my grades are quite up there yet, but like Union County College can be like, hey, we have the degree, we have the startings of your degree program with the professors, since there isn't like, you can now have professors working in both universities at the same time at the county level and at the associates level. It creates integration with certain like degree programs. What that looks like, which is kind of cringe, I'm not gonna lie, is that you'll have people for the BA and say like a music theory 1 course alongside other associate degree students. And on its face, it should be the exact same thing. And that's even what people advertise at the community college level, is that these these programs for the first 2 years are the exact same thing. So why not make sure they're the exact same thing by making sure that you have deals with these other universities? It seems like a win-win.
Fu Manchu in chat saying that they actually have that in the ASU system, but maybe you were describing that.
Yeah, I'm saying a situation where like
okay.
if I was applying to ASU from out of state.
Oh, out of
And I
state.
didn't
Okay.
get accepted, but then it's like, oh, well, come to Mesa instead and dorm here first and do the things.
ASU is awesome, actually.
Let's go
I
to
love that.
let's go to Hans, who's been waiting quite patiently, and then we'll go to Biggs and let's see if Agent 10 has anything to say. Probably not though.
See, Prime, you know, we don't have to be enemies. You don't have to do this to me. But specifically,
He's got it out for you, Hans. I'm sorry.
I know he does.
You need to rise above it. You need to draw on that Hans
Honestly,
energy.
no.
So,
you
like,
don't
okay,
lean
so-
into it,
so
Hans.
he's
I'm
not here,
for
which is
the
really-
villain arc. I want this for you.
I'm doing it. He's not here, so I don't get to watch him mauled in person. But like Connor, I don't particularly give a shit about like the capitalist aspect of this. When we were talking about this, I thought we were just talking about like strengthening communities, providing people opportunity, right? Like, and and what Maddie like brought up earlier about how like this is an equity issue. We want to make the people who can pay while making sure that like the people who can't pay have like some sort of resources so they can get like these services. I think we're kind of going about this the wrong way, or at least like Connor was like it's not about finger fucking. I want more people in America or in any country like rather to have more associate's degrees, whether it's like in arts, whether it's in technical training. I want a more educated, more skilled populace. And it seems like that means we're going to have to like put more resources in to have these schools have better programs or like have more resources. I would love a like program where like any like community college could go to any like state school, right, or any like upper school in the state. Like I think that's something that we could work on in terms of like providing infrastructure for kids, so that it's not just like, oh, like the one school that has a relationship with community college X has too many people, so you couldn't like get let in, right? I think the best way of doing that is having like multiple funnels from like various community colleges we can have, and we can have that at the state level. So any like fucking conservatives that want to do some bullshit about states' rights, like what we have, because it's not at the federal level, it's at the state level. So state colleges can go, like state community schools can go to state colleges. But so for this specifically, I don't see why we're stuck on the capitalist aspect of living. I think it seems for a lot of these like places, Agent 10 like brought up a relatively decent point earlier, that if you want to live in a place, the best way is probably like living off campus, not living in like the dorm lifestyle. And if there are dumb fucks who want to like spend a ton of money, that like Maddie was talking about, or like and like those rich asshole kids, we can have a little like penthouse like for you there. But like that's not like the point. The point is making sure that it's easier for like for people to get these services. And if we're talking about like if we're doing the scary socialism shit, right? I want tuition to be covered for these kids, and then I want to eliminate like all the other costs. And like that means encouraging people to go to community colleges like in their communities where it's accessible to them, like transportation wise. If we have to fix transportation so kids can go to community college, like via buses, then like I'm totally fine like having that like flavor of infrastructure. If I have to like hire a couple fucking buses as opposed to building dorms, I will hire some fucking buses, right? Like it feels like we're trying to like build a rocket ship where we can just build a car. Like it feels like we're going about these infrastructure issues like the wrong way. And like I'm sorry, you dirty capitalist, but like I really don't give a shit about that. I care about like making my communities like better educated and better, and like making my country more competitive in terms of like skills and services.
This policy was aiming to do
Let's
that, though.
go to
Even if
Biggs,
it was capitalist.
Yeah,
Biggs,
so
and then Agent 10.
all right, perfect. My issue I'm having now is that I think that the problem we're living in this ideal world where you think that this is all going to be hunky dory and we're going to have people to fill these spots, we're going to have people to fill these dorms, not even considering the actual infrastructure costs, whether it's going to be having to raise taxes to actually build these facilities in the first place, things like that. I think there's a lot of things we aren't considering for the actual solution when we can actually have this solved by like what Joe said earlier, which is why aren't the state schools just kind of offering these programs to begin with? I think that's the actual better option, and I think we need to have. And as much as I lean towards the right, I do think that education is something we should be perfectly fine with throwing our money into, to making maybe the first 2 years of state school free, something like that. I'd much rather have that than having to build this infrastructure that I don't think is necessary, especially when we have colleges closing every year because of lack of enrollment and decreased enrollment, especially since it's been declining since 2010, which was the peak, which is right after I graduated from college myself. So I just think that this is living in a fantasy world where we're actually able to fill these spots. And while I agree that there may be places, like you said, Florida State, Connor, and things like that, but I think the overall of the whole country, I think it's going to be a net positive to have the state schools handle it and not do this and increase costs of the community colleges. Were meant to be the cheap way to get your first 2 years done.
Let's go to Agent 10, Counter,
Kind of
and
like a small
Layman.
question, like really quick. Biggs, why are you assuming that like having a massive like influx of like these like former community college like people into these state colleges will like be cheaper infrastructure wise than like just having it like potentially like better transportation towards like community areas? I'm not sure where you made that leap.
So what I'm saying is that to me, community colleges are meant to be a cheap option to get your first 2 years out of the way. And I know in my area, I would have been able to get my first 2 years free if I would have went to my community college. Now, again, I was in band and did things that were like extracurricular that I could get scholarships for. It was relatively cheap. Now, I went to it was a big community college, but it was in a kind of a rural area. But my thinking is, if we want people get to a point where they can get these degrees and actually fund this, I think it's better to already use the infrastructure that's already there when we have state schools losing enrollment, and integrate the people that are at the community college level through government incentives to basically make those first 2 years free. Because I think
that's
I know Joe Biden's plan was to make community college free, which I think is good. But why not make state school free for the first 2 years and then have it go from
let's
there?
go to agent counter layman.
Yeah, I really don't see the difference now between what everyone's proposing from just regular universities. I don't get the idea that, we're going to make housing super cheap all of a sudden and it's going to subsidize other people, because if that was true, then, other universities would have already done this and people wouldn't be paying 14 grand for weird fucking cubicles with smelly other people, right? Also, the idea that we're trying to justify this, Connor, because people are finger banging each other and getting drunk, fucking blacking out 8 times a week is bullshit. And that's part of the reason why my whole generation right now is paying 20, 30, even 40 grand to go to a fucking college for the quote unquote experience just to get fucked in the end. So I mean, I really don't understand.
He's right.
Oh,
He's
boy.
right. He's absolutely
You have
correct.
so much sex at college, guys.
Oh,
That's no
Also, the idea I'm not finger fucking
Yeah, you
black 8 times a week from home is wrong.
Like
Oh,
that
boy.
shit, I was fucking crushing that shit. Now I graduated and
College
like everything's fucking gone. Like I don't walk down the street and see beautiful people anymore, and it really makes my feelings sad.
Okay.
So, like,
Let's go.
also it's been COVID since I graduated, but like
Let's go to counter, and then oh man, I don't know how to you transition from these things. So
It's all right. I got it.
counter
I'm too
layman.
powerful, I get it. Like yeah,
It's gonna get weird, guys. I warned you.
like let's go.
It's all right. It's all right. I got you.
Isn't
All right.
this
So,
a dating panel? Like, hey Connor, how
okay.
you doing?
hey, how are you? So, all right. Hold on. Wait, you flirting with me? What are we doing?
Yeah, it's happening.
Are you liking me right now? Like,
All right. Hold on.
Hey,
Okay,
Connor.
so basically, like, all right, I think the more sensible voices here are probably going to prevail. Biggs, Agent 10, because what's going to happen is a bunch of conservatives are going to say, oh well, do we want to invest in this infrastructure when year over year enrollment is going down, blah blah blah, and it's cheaper just for people to live with their parents and get buses. I think you guys lack vision, and that makes me depressed. But
Blah, blah, blah. That's it. That's
not enough sex.
that's pretty much that. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So no, because basically here's
Why
the thing.
would anybody go to community college when they go to a state school? Like I don't understand what.
Okay, because what we're talking about, at least from what I'm seeing from the studies that I was able to pull up fairly quickly, was that enrollment was dropping by like 0.5% or 1% year over year. So this is basically like like when you're talking about growth. Maybe it's just because I live in like a boom state. Like I'm part of the Sun Belt phenomena. So we're not losing people, we're gaining people. People are getting sick of living in places like Michigan, Ohio, New Jersey, New York, California. They're getting sick of living in Idaho, all these kinds of places. So I think it would actually work for here. But if you were in a Rust Belt state where they were basically considering like, how do we even keep the doors open? Let alone give our students good stuff, then the problem here is probably a problem of my environment is not the same as yours. I think the Californians probably have a similar environment where supply and demand, the ratios are just completely off. Demand is so much higher than supply. So for me, I'm seeing opportunity. Because I'm seeing like a bunch of like rich kids who don't know how to spend their money, who could subsidize poor kids to go to school. And I know a whole bunch, thousands, tens of thousands of retail and restaurant workers who are just like dying for the opportunity to become plumbers, welders, nurses, physician's assistants, all that kind of stuff. And if they had infrastructural assistance in order to get a partial college experience, get the college experience, and then also get a degree program that allowed them to live a good life going forward, they would absolutely jump at the chance. So I think just to wrap up, I think this solution works here, not in the Rust Belt, if they're literally seeing like dramatic declines in enrollment and dramatic declines in population.
Let's go to layman. But honestly, counter, I don't know who was ever happy of living in Idaho. You're gonna have to send me a source for that shit.
There's some environmentalist people who are really happy, but besides that, nobody else. Maybe the deer.
Layman, and then I want to step in and give my opinion on
Lane's really
this.
pretty.
Go ahead, layman.
Who's really pretty?
Idaho.
Coeur d'Alene in Idaho.
Okay, cool. So, fuck America. So
you too, buddy. You're very pretty, buddy.
Thank you. You too. So I wanted to build off. So I kind of wanted to re-articulate and go back to Connor's like like stinky, smelly, finger fucking military dorm and kind of advocate for it in like a hopefully like a different way. Because I actually really like the idea, but I think the way it's being conveyed to a lot of people is just like totally
Layman's
dumb.
anti-Coomer gang. Like, fuck this guy. Like, we're here to be horny on Maine, you bastard. Like, I get it. Like,
Why are
sex.
you guys attacking Hans so hard? Like it's bad.
I get it. I can take the hits. I'll do it for you. Like everyone, all Coomers in the audience, fellow horny on Maine people, sock Twitter. I'm here for you. You fucking degenerate bastards. I love every one of you, and I will protect the life of Layman, who apparently is just anti-sex. Like I don't.
While I am less of a Coomer than the rest of the people here.
Like when you're so aggressive about it, it just makes you think. Right? I'm just gonna put Jordan Peterson and leave that hang without finishing the point. I'll let all of you assume what I really mean when I say that.
It's totally possible to go back to normal, just like solo content sound. So it's not too late. Great, trust me.
Ultimately,
never too late to reconsider.
Fucking play Pokemon. I'm all out of Pokemon. Like.
I hope I remember what
I think
my point was.
There's a really interesting thing to talk about. I just don't understand still at this point why we have to address it through the education system. Why, when we're still fighting for the idea of affordable education, why we're
don't raise your
for
fucking hand, Connor. I didn't get to talk yet.
Yeah.
There's plenty of other things that we can address these issues.
Layman finish, and I'd like to maybe try to address Sansal's points. Go ahead.
Yeah, we can. I'm fine with talking about Sansal's thing because I think that's a good conversation to have. But as far as like education in and of itself and what to do about that, like I like Connor's idea of basically like, obviously it's hyperbolic to like turn like vocational schools into literal fucking like military barracks, but I kind of like the idea of sort of making the college. I know this is gonna sound anti-Coomer. It's fine if you're horny. You can go.
Just go ahead. Make your point.
Sorry. I'm sorry if you're getting a little horny for what I'm saying, Prime. Sorry. So if I like the idea of like turning college, vocational school into a pragmatic thing and not a for the experience thing. That's a cultural push that I support. And if that can give people, I thought I heard a weird noise for a second. Sorry.
Yeah, I sucked my teeth.
Yeah, fuck you. So if that the goal of college isn't like for the experience, I'm sorry, Connor, for the experiences that you can get at college are experiences that should be at elsewhere and developed elsewhere. And I know. So but I like the idea of turning it into a pragmatic thing where getting good educational opportunities is the end goal, and lowering all of the costs associated with all the other stupid shit and turning them into these fucking barracks, like Connor just said, seems to be like something that can please everybody. It should please the libertarians. If it doesn't, I'm sorry, but it should please the libertarians because that would save the state a ton of fucking money, and it would save fuck, what was I gonna say now? It would please the progressive side because a lot of people would be able to get shit like affordable food and get. Okay, sorry, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. That's right. It was the anti-Coomer shit. That's why the left did hate me.
You said you're not horny on me, but you talked a lot about pleasing just then. So I don't know about that, Layman.
Layman, if you're finished, only you're finished, I'm gonna like to
finish Layman, please. Like,
finish, please, buddy.
Yeah. I'm so sorry.
Now I'm going. All right. So anyway, let's try to handle this. And Counter, we'll go to you next after that. But okay. I think I am not in favor, and Counter will definitely respond to this. I'm not in favor of
everyone's gonna fight me now.
Counter's BS with his military style dorms, whatever the fuck he was, cinder block. Dormitories. I'm not in favor of any of that shit.
Love it.
Why?
Yeah, well, I will explain why. So one, I'm not for like punishing the poor, right? So giving them substandard living housing, right, as compared to what you can get in other dormitories. I mean, I'm not saying they have to have some sort of amazing suite or something, right? But like, I don't see why they have to have a significantly lower standard, which is what you're offering here, which you're explicitly offering, a lowered standard of living if we are going to put them in dorms. So I'm not for that at all, right? In fact, we want to make this an attractive option, right? Even if it might be a limited option, but an attractive option for individuals. I agree with a layman insofar as like for pragmatism, right? But I don't see these things in competition with having these experiences, and these experiences are actually very valuable. Experiences I had when I was in college and I lived in dorms was actually quite amazing. One of my best years, or some of my best years, were in those dorms, right? And the things we share, and the way it allows you to grow as a human being, right? Having that chance to be away from your parents, right? Like you don't, it's a different experience living at home. It simply is, right? And that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad experience, but it's a different one. And if people want to take that option, right? Fuck like the quote unquote practicality of it all. Like if they want to have that option, they should be able to have that option. I'm for, I mean, coming from me, obviously, right? I'm a free college for on all levels, except for the private schools. So fuck them. Shouldn't have them in the first place. But for state schools, certainly they should all be free, in my opinion. So that's where I'm coming from. So people who lack those resources, absolutely should have the same experiences. Why not? One, you can travel. Let's say if this was actually successful, right? And we had colleges competing, because I thought that was a really interesting idea that Joe Lewis had, competing for students. Well, then they would start offering things that maybe another community college is not offering. So even though it's quote unquote community, maybe there are people are coming from farther away to get to that place, right? Because they're offering some sort of program they think that will be helpful for them in the future. So I'm definitely for that as well. In terms of like, you said Sansal. I want to be very clear as to what you were asking. You were saying, why are we handling this through? I think what you were trying to do was make an either or thing, right? Talking about how like we don't have sustainable cheap housing for so many people, right? Like through our housing market. Maybe if we lowered that, that would be a better use of our time. Is that maybe what you're going for?
Almost. So what I'm saying is there's so many things that we can advocate for, right? I think that fighting for affordable college is a really, really important thing that we should be fighting for. And I also think that fighting for cheap, affordable housing is something that we should be fighting for, right? When we're looking at how colleges work, we have some institutions that have dormitories and kind of like cheap little apartments on campus, but it doesn't seem to me that we should be spending the time to try and make this sort of thing available for community college when we don't have affordable college in the first place. When we also have this other issue with housing, we could just solve the issue that we're talking about right here in the community college by fixing housing, like fixing up like affordable housing for low income individuals, right? Because most people probably, I just don't think that most people are going to take this offer to live like 5 minutes away from their parents in their community college and go in there and pay $500 a month to finger fuck people, right? I just don't think that the finger fucking is that worth it.
So I think
True.
So,
Ye of little vision.
Oh boy.
What the fuck?
So
listen, I literally, I was when I was
King,
muted,
like, oh
I
my
looked
God,
at
I
the
was
cost. I looked
dying
at the
to
cost
live
of a
there.
normal university's like dorms every month, and it's fucking $500 a month at a like a pretty okay like medium sized university, right? So if it's $500 for a place there, why are we charging the same for fucking barracks like cinder blocks painted with lead paint? You know, like why?
Oh
Again,
my God, you guys
so
have so
counter.
limited vision.
Oh my God.
One second.
That was a
So
dream.
one again, I'm not for counterpoints of vision, right? Nor am I for his like
Cowards.
his like, oh, it should only be for rich quote unquote fuck ups, right? And then poor kids. First of all, once you start putting these barriers in place, you're gonna underserve people. The moment you start putting like, okay, well, you're too rich or too poor to be in these situations, then you're gonna be living people out who actually could use this housing. It actually would be useful to them, right? Understanding that there are people with very chaotic house lives, right? And that to college is their first time to get away from that, right? And then like their advancement like depends on them not being within that environment. So I'm not for at
No,
all.
I agree, but the thing that I'm
but I'm
saying,
saying,
is the amount of people that might
and-
go into the community college housing might just like we might as well just like fix it because it doesn't seem like there's that many people that are in that
First of all,
environment comparatively.
First of all, I don't think we have actually good statistics to tell how many people would be taking these offers, right? I don't know, right? Maybe you're right. Maybe there's not that many, or maybe there is. Maybe there is actually a big demand for this that simply is unknown because we never actually bothered to care about it because the community colleges are generally filled with people of lower income, right? So maybe this is something. Maybe not. We could like start like pilot programs. You don't want to like roll this out across the country. Start with New Jersey, right? No one cares what happens in New Jersey. So see if it's successful there, and then move on, right? But in terms of like and I'm never for this dichotomy that we put like between like progressive priorities, right? Like we can't advocate for both. Of course, we can advocate for both. We can absolutely. We are in a country where there are plenty of activists who can either activate for, push for one or the other or both, right? So I never like putting these things in contention with another because there are people who are in either camps who will be served better by one option or another option, right? And if you focus only just on the one option, it doesn't necessarily mean like it's not like this Venn diagram doesn't necessarily completely overlap. So so I want to make sure I'm trying to, as a progressive, I'm trying to get everyone served, right? Everyone's basic needs served, and this I think is a part of that. So anyway, I think I'm done my rant. Counter, and then maybe someone else wants to respond to anything.
Okay. Well, I didn't know I was in a room with a bunch of fucking vol cells, people who are above fucking getting laid. I mean, Jesus fucking Christ. If you don't want to get laid, if you don't, yeah, nerds. Apparently, fucking Maddie and me are the only fucking college coomers. I mean, I'm a fucking boomer now, so I can't do that shit anymore. But anyways, so basically, why aren't we talking about housing in general? The reason why we're not talking about housing in general is because this is the fucking problem, and this is what I heard with Prime's speech, is you're trying to solve all problems simultaneously. I'm not trying to solve all problems. I'm just trying to create better access to housing for people who are going to community college. So if that means that I can get a few kids, a few out-of-state rich fuck-ups to subsidize housing for poor kids who otherwise wouldn't have accessibility, if I can create communal housing, that way people have, because I think communal housing is actually pretty cool, especially when you're a young person. Communal housing is not cool for adults, but it's cool for young people because you don't have to be like me and Maddie and Hans, a bunch of degenerate coomers, okay? You could also just be a cool-based video game communitarian and create LAN parties and play your favorite video games in the room with people your age, in the community spaces. You could also be fucking like the dorks that I went to fucking community college with, who brought their fucking like their retro N64s and fucking 32-inch televisions into the common area at lunch and then played like I don't even know what they were playing. They were like playing like original fucking like digital Pokemon fucking games and shit.
Those
Oh,
so like people fuck, just so you know.
I'm sure they do, but they probably only fuck each other. So anyways, so the point being that it's not just about sex. It's also about community. It's also about communal experiences. It's also about creating friends and experiences. And you guys all kind of denigrated the quote unquote college experience. And what's kind of sad to me about that is like all my communal experiences from like 18 to 22 were in the military, and they were with young men. I didn't bang any of them, but they were with young men, and it was a communal experience. And then I went to college, and because I didn't have communal living, I basically I woke up, I went to work, I went to school, and then I went home, and that's what I did. I had no communal experiences. I didn't bind or bond or understand anybody in my college. And as a result, not only did I miss out on that experience, but on top of that, the only communal experiences that I get to look at back out on fondly are the military experiences. And on top of that, looking forward into adulthood and the grave, my only communal experiences are with my wife, my immediate family, maybe my extended family, and then dorks like you that I meet online, which is incredibly fun, by the way. I miss you guys. I wish we could do this in person. But that's what I'm saying. Like, this is a shadow of what it is to spend time with people who are 18 to 22, who share the same interests that you do, who are trying to figure it out, who are trying to fucking become adults, and they don't know how. And they do cringe and they do cool things and they mix all those things back and forth together. I'll wrap it up, Prime. And then basically, you guys are talking about punishing the poor by making them live in cinder block housing. I'm sorry. I'm going to be a little mean here. You guys are being fucking cowards. Fucking 400 square feet and cinder block walls that I could hang fucking rock and roll posters on. Fucking, double bunk beds and shit. That's rough to you. Get the fuck out of here. You got air conditioning. You got fucking internet connections. You got your friends. You can go to the common area and barbecue. You can play video games in the fucking common area. Who the fuck gives a shit whether or not your walls are drywall or not? Who gives a shit about the fucking acoustics?
I went to college with
Come up
trust
with a
fund
price
kids
that you
that were
wanna
perfectly
pay.
fine with it because it was fucking fun, and you throw floor parties, and it's all about being in a community where you're all like in your prime and you get to hang out
You go to
and you
state
get to
school
know
or
all
Why-
these people. I
Why do
literally did
all
that
you
with like
boomers
trust fund
think you
kids,
have
and they
to
were
pay
fun.
this
I'm
much
not
money for that?
denigrating that idea. Like of course lead paint stuff that I was joking around. Like I don't really care one way or another how I just think that if we're going to do it for community college and we're going to be charging the same amount as like a regular university's housing costs, maybe we should lower the cost. If it was like $300 a month, I
Sure.
think I'd be
I felt so. We got to move on. So I'll say this. I forgot to say one thing before we go to Joe Lewis. That's in terms of community housing, right? I'm all for changing the idea of being like having to live at home. I think that's actually fantastic that people will live at home. I think that we should get back to the idea of generational housing. So like that should be a normal thing, like it is in everywhere else in the world. It has been for like almost the entire history of the world until like literally after World War II. Then we came up with this nonsense about nuclear families and you have to leave in the nest, right? Rather than people staying at home, having the support structure they need right there. Like I'm definitely for that. Let's encourage. And I was gonna say something else to kind of something about him and his like his social buddies and sex, but it'll come back to me. Joe Lewis, please.
Yeah, something that so the cost of like, well, what's going to be the cost? We have to remember that every state is going to handle who determines the cost differently. This is why this topic in one way is a test to see if you know things about higher education. As an example, for New Jersey, it's a board of directors that sets things like tuition and housing. So one of the things currently, which is why I should have put the proposal of the bill in the first place, is that it amends a current law that provides the power to grant the board of dormitories, including dining and other things. But that's going to go to the facilities, which is, the name is off the top of my head, the board of trustees, excuse me. So the board of trustees would set that price and determine what are the things that are going to be built there, and then determining the tuition from there. However, it's going to vary from state to state. So some states are going to have board of trustees, some states are going to have something like Arizona, for an example. They use it's like they use like a board of higher education to determine their cost of tuition, and then at the community level, it's also an open show. So you could have the state legislature who sets it, the state board of education, state systems of boards of higher education, and also just local community college boards looking for the price. And then that's the thing that's going to get interesting. Like in Indiana, for example, they set the tuition price from a local community college board. So they would also, in turn, based on the wording of this law, be in control of the pricing of dormitories. However, if you go to California, for instance, at the county level and technical level, it's done by the state legislature. So knowing what the cost is going to be and we kind of see it in real time, like our relationship with who is like determining the cost of these things is going to determine your relationship with these systems. Like as another example, for Nevada, right, it's the state system and the board of higher education, and then at the community college level, it's also the state boards of higher education. So an individual in Nevada is going to have a different like relationship with this. So for me, when it comes to costs, right, it's a matter, again, from New Jersey, right, because they did the local board of trustees determines cost, as well as At the 4-year, it's like single and multi boards depending on what university you go to. So in terms of cost, that's up to making sure you have board of trustees and individuals that actually have what's in the best interest of the students in the first place. Because one of the problems could be, right, is that you get a group of board of trustees that are looking to compete with these other community colleges with things that have nothing to do with housing, because it can start with dormitories, but we can all know that like it doesn't just include dormitories, because dormitories can lead into the facilities for food, which could filter into different programs like culinary services. You could also have a filtration system into just the running of the dormitories in the first place. So you might have individuals who are looking to go into some type of administrative thing. They might start as RAs or residence hall directors or residence hall assistants. So there's like multiple jobs that exist in that are run by students, which is why you see at the college level that like the people who work, usually, unless you're in New Jersey and we're stuck with gourmet dining, that's literally the name of the company, where the individuals are just your fucking run-of-the-mill business individuals. But some schools rely on the culinary services to filter into those programs. They like to filter into like the food that's being created there. However, you might have a board of trustees that might get a nice deal from the KFCs, the McDonald's, the Burger Kings of the world, and then they start building up and then validate, oh, because we have all these nice things that we have to make sure we pay for it, we got to up the cost of room and board, we have to maybe up the cost of tuition, and that's where things can get kind of dicey. But just a thought there, because there was a little bit of argument.
So let's go to Maddie, and then let's maybe move on to another Maddie and Agent 10, and then move on to another subject.
Yeah, I just really wanted to, I said it in chat, but I wanted to reiterate here. I do like that Sansol pointed out the need for improving overall like low income housing, because I think that would alleviate a lot of the issues and barriers that prevent many low income students from pursuing a higher education. I happen to have a really good friend who I interviewed on my stream a couple of months ago, who had to drop out of college because he couldn't afford the tuition anymore, because he was also having to work full time to like afford and keep up with the payments. But then also because of where he lived, relative to where the university was, and they have no good public transportation. There was no way for him to like get to school on time, and all the housing right next to the school was super expensive. So there was no way they could, otherwise, he's like, if there had been some sort of low income housing available, I could have finished my degree. So I think that is a massive barrier. And I am glad that Sansol brought that up, because we shouldn't view other policy like housing as siloed away from higher education, because they are intertwined.
I think that's a really good point. Agent 10.
Yeah, the one thing I'm really going to hit back on is the way that, you need to pay 14 grand for a dilapidated fallout bunker in the back of a university just so you get the college experience of having friends and shit. Connor, I'm really sorry that like you couldn't actually experience the camaraderie of certain, college times, whether it be like because you didn't dorm or it's because like you did military first. It's like, I don't get it. And I commute and I still have a bunch of friends. I still, when Corona wasn't kicking my ass, went to a bunch of parties. I still had a lot of college experiences just in one semester that I had so far. So I really don't understand the fact that you have to pay out your ass for a college experience, but you could get just fine not paying that. And I really don't like the idea of, having that system be rooted even further into the college system and spread to community college.
But you don't. So this is the capitalist argument. Prime, I'll be quick. This is the capitalist argument. You don't have to live off campus. Let the fucking dumbass coomers like fucking Hans and Maddie fucking pay out the ass so they can fucking hang out with their friends and play. Let the nerds like fucking Prime.
No.
Yeah, let the fucking nerds like Prime and me pay $500 to $1,000 a month so we can have communal fucking spaces that do video games. And here's the thing: I keep hearing cost. It's like, again, I pointed out like $500 to $1,000 a month is normal. It's normal rent. It's just it's less than normal rent. $500.
What makes you think it's going to be that cheap?
Because it does. If you have 160 people living in the same building and the building costs $320,000 a year, it doesn't cost $320,000 a year to upkeep a fucking $320,000 building. It costs maybe
You
10.
have hundreds of kids living in university buildings and still paying their ass out for tuition and room and board for just the upkeep.
They get okay. So hold on. This is why I want cinder block walls, because guess what? Booze and jizz comes off of the walls real fucking bleach. Okay, it's fucking
Mhm.
cheap.
You can power wash
but-
it.
dude. Fucking bleach is mad cheap. So you mean like the upkeep is just wild? Like no, it's not. Buy a fucking bottle of bleach, spray down the walls, and squeegee that bitch. You're good to go.
And then the wall's gonna be fine. You're not gonna like hurt
real
the
quick.
wall.
Real
God
quick,
damn.
just so we're clear, right? Asian and I are in a very special case because even though in some states it might be 500, we're paying an estimate on average over $1,500 a month when it comes to room and board and dorming, and then that's before meal prices.
I don't.
That's why.
So,
For garbage.
You guys are in New Jersey, though.
but
so you
but
get
here's the
fucking
thing.
at least
I
no matter
reject
Well, the
all
whole
this
question
because
is New Jersey.
That's why like the reason why I bring, not to cut you off, Prime, but the reason why I bring that up is that like the cost of live. This is another problem with the school system, right? Is that in New Jersey we see the problem outright, where it's like we're staring at subpar facilities, and then it's like, why am I paying the equivalent of $13,000 for just a semester to live here? And then on top of that, I'm not living there for the full year round. And that's where like we start seeing the inequities. And that's before things like tuition, which for example at Rutgers University, New Brunswick, the room and board is more expensive than the tuition by the current state, $1,000 difference. We're talking 13,000 versus 12,000. And then when you pack on the fees, some of the fees have nothing to do with rooming and boarding, and that's like it's just like meal plan and stuff. So on top of the $3,000 for the meal plan, and other mandatory fees, you're paying like $16,000 just for a semester, which is insane. But other
Yeah.
states have it way better than we do.
So
Listen,
I
just move,
reject. Hold on,
Fivehead.
I just reject the idea. And I don't think many other states. Maybe I guess I can't say that. But I think a lot of the states are having the same thing that's happening in New Jersey, apparently, right? Like the price of living, right? The cost of higher education is not commensurate with like the expense of providing higher education. That we can understand. Like universities just actively just raising the prices, like regardless one or the other. And on the other side of it, federal funding has kept decreasing for federal education. So what this reminds me of this conversation is okay, so we have a situation where oftentimes fucking Republicans have decided, well, let's start cutting, right? Let's start cutting this funding. You know, it's too much, right? So you cut these funding to these vital services, right, that we all fucking rely on, right? The price raises, the quality decreases, right? And then you look back and when we're talking about maybe expanding or changing these services, well, it's not working. We can see that the program's not working, right? So why would we invest more into this system? This is what happens all the time in our politics. So I think we have, once again, has to be back to deciding that education is absolutely worth our time, absolutely worth our energy, right? Let's not stop fucking around here and put the requisite amount of attention that this deserves, right? If we're going to continue being a powerhouse of a nation, right? Then it starts with education, right? It starts actually before college, but like we're just talking about this now. But anyway. All right, so let's thank you, Maddie. Let's move and let's stop tossing accusations at Maddie. Maddie's amazing. Like,
Oh, you can accuse me. No, I'm awful. It's fine.
She's the best.
I'm the worst.
Oh man. So let's go to the next topic. The US and China are the biggest greenhouse gas emitters. Should the global south, which bears the brunt of global warming's effects, be able to sue these nations for the damages they've done? If so, how would you go about calculating the damages? All right, start with Joe.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure if suing would lead to the right outcomes and optics for the countries globally. Am I
It's
right,
basi-
America and China?
It's basically reparations, but yeah.
Yeah. I do, however, think that here we go. I ended up on bad Middle East takes. listen here. I do, however, think that the United States and China should be working together to help improve the infrastructure of countries that need them, as well as many countries as possible, from being like frank here, so we can have a more collaborative global effort, not only for solving problems that certain countries face, as we're paying very close attention to Palestine right now, but for global problems like climate change and COVID-19. I think the United States ought to help improve the infrastructure of other countries. It's just that every time we do it, we kind of fuck it up.
Okay. Layman.
Yeah, sure. So, as far as suing goes in regards to climate change, I don't know like how you would do that unless there was like a concrete like environmental disaster that the United States or China did in a developed country. Like that, like I mean, as far as like just the general idea of climate change disproportionately having negative effects on those places, I don't know how like you would meaningfully differentiate that from like problems with climate change that would occur now, aside from the fact that one is like just statistically worse than the other. So as far as that goes, I don't know, but like I do like Joe Lewis basically said, I'm fine with using global trade to sort of like elevate these people up more. I think like Vietnam recently introduced some market reforms, and like that would help them get to a point where they could like afford things like more renewable energy and stuff like that. And obviously that should be a switch that the United States makes, and other places too. I mean, everywhere in the world should switch to renewable energy, and yeah, that's something I support. So I don't know, it's kind of a loaded topic question for me. So that's it.
Counterpoints.
Yeah, I'm against suing or reparations, I guess. I think that the better way forward is more focusing on productive things that we can do. So, for instance, carbon capture is a technology that people are looking at right now. Also, switching to EVs seems to be on the horizon. Even large producers like Ford are currently producing something that I watched a review for recently, the Mustang Mach. Mach E. It's literally a sport utility vehicle, slightly bodied like a Mustang, and with actually a big ass trunk and a trunk in the front area. So if I ever have $60,000, I'll buy it myself. But basically, like we need to switch now. So basically, coal needs to go. Need to switch to natural gas because it's 70% more clean. We need to invest in carbon capture technology in order to reduce our annual output, even go into a carbon net. We need to be talking about lab grown of carbon and greenhouse gases that are created on an annual basis are from agriculture, oftentimes meat. So there's a shitload of methane that is way worse than carbon that's being emitted by cows right now. Lab grown meat is a way to replicate meat perfectly genetically without actually hurting a cow at all. It also reduces emissions by like 90%. So there's actually a whole host of technologies that I hope lefties are completely wrong on. I hope that in the next 12 years, lab-grown meat, carbon capture, electric vehicles, fusion or fission reactors, and then natural gas kind of save us from ourselves. So I think that's the more productive path than retributive carbon levies.
Lab-grown meat. Contra always knows
It's coming.
Contra knows,
better than
always knows how to talk dirty to me. Thank you for that.
It's better than eating crickets, okay? It's better than eating crickets.
Oh boy. Has everyone seen Snowpiercer?
I fucking love that movie.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Oh man.
That's a great movie.
That one scene was pretty rough. That was pretty rough.
Oh.
But let's go with Hans.
Yeah, so as someone who doesn't think that technology is going to randomly save all of us from climate change, it's going to like take some extreme like geopolitical like multilateral like global efforts to stop it. I still think climate reparations or the possibility of suing like more powerful countries leads to some really messed up dynamics, because there's not going to be a lot of incentive for big countries to give like money back to smaller countries. And if we do this on a haphazard, like, oh, like Bangladesh got flooded again, so like let's like sue China, and it's like, okay, but that's not going to solve the flooding problem. Like what would have solved flooding would have like been like a a global effort to like cut carbon emissions and make sure that we like don't go over like the limit for like global heating. So I feel like even if you were in favor of this, which I am in favor of, like global climate justice, it just feels like this is like one of the like dumbest possible ways to get like go about it. So that's my take on this. Again, like sorry if I pissed off any lefties like in the audience, but like gang, like we need a global effort to stop this. But like having a haphazard like legal system like where small countries sue big countries like to give them money for like the climate destruction that's happening to them is like not going to solve the climate crisis. So I don't know why I focused on this.
Pigs.
Yeah. So as far as this issue goes, I think the better option is to have these more industrialized nations help the third world countries be able to have their own renewable type energy systems, whether that be solar or hydro electric or even nuclear. And I know nuclear is kind of a bit testy because we don't want to give nuclear things to specific countries, but I think that's honestly our best option overall, as far as like the amount of energy put in for energy created. But I know that's kind of like a touchy subject, but I think it's more along the lines of these countries like the United States, like Russia, like the European Union. They need to help these third countries reach their energy goals. And I don't really think there's any way we can have a system where countries can sue other countries because of like natural disasters due to climate change. I think that's kind of a ridiculous premise to begin with, but I do think it is kind of the responsibility of these countries that have had their industrial evolutions kind of give a helping hand to these other countries that are just now having their own industrial revolutions, like India and China, and like these the African countries especially. They're some of the most worst hit as far as the climate issues currently.
So
Yeah, I would like to see some help provided to smaller nations. Some of these nations probably won't exist, given the current trends of global warming, like the Maldives. Those motherfuckers are gone. All right, so they're not even going to be able to sue us because they're not going to be around. So it does feel like there should be some way for the larger, more industrialized nations that created the problem to offer some way to help the people in these countries. I don't know if suing them would necessarily help. I mean, certainly, like morally, they should have some kind of recompense because they didn't cause the problem. They are bearing most of the brunt of the consequences, and yet there's nothing done for them. No, something should be done. I don't know if suing is the answer, though. Offering them citizenship or offering or the larger countries inventing ways to capture carbon, like Counterpoint said. I did have one question for Connor to answer once we get into open discussion, which was, what tech do you think lefties, or what tech do you want lefties to be wrong about? That's a interesting one, but because it feels like all of the technology needs to be used in tandem in order for us to adequately address this. But yeah, that's all I have to say. I think that, and also, why are we including China, even though they're the country that's polluting like number 2 now? That's only been like a relatively
They're
short
polluting more than the
trend.
United States. I think China has like 30% of the world's like carbon
Currently,
emissions. States is
yeah.
like
But like in
I think they're
totality,
pretty
who
close.
In
has
totality, but
has
you have to remember we have 100
pretty
years head
close.
start on everybody else. That's the issue.
well, sure. I'm just saying, like, if we're going to like be blaming people on the issue at hand, then who did it more
So
is
do we
what we would
blame
be looking
China
at.
like 100
But
years from now? Is that how
well,
this works?
what I'm saying, all I'm saying is, I just think that there's the nations that are ahead. That's why I'm saying it's not something that we should be blaming them for and like letting people sue. It seems like the nations that are ahead should be helping the smaller ones. I probably worded it in a weird way,
Maddie.
but that's all I have to say.
So I agree with what I assume seems to be the general consensus, which is that allowing nations to sue each other, I don't know will have the a decent outcome, or I don't know that it will do much to address what's happening in our climate and how that impacts these smaller nations. I think one thing that larger nations can do, because we do have to rectify with the reality that it was we are the main perpetuators of climate change. We are responsible for the accelerating rate of climate change, which is disproportionately impacting developing countries, especially those in the Southern Hemisphere. So that's, decimating their economy, their livelihoods, their safety. That's something I think that we have to rectify with. Now, whether that accountability comes in the form of suing, I don't think so. What I think could be another option would be some sort of financial, whether it's financial assistance, whether it's simply resource assistance, but essentially trying to equip these countries with the necessary resources to either combat climate change or protect their population from the effects of climate change. I also think that once we start seeing people becoming climate refugees, I know that sounds like fantastical, but it's a reality that could likely happen soon because of how quickly climate change has accelerated. I think the industrialized nations, the larger nations like us, China, should bear the burden of welcoming these refugees in. And I think we should be the ones responsible for ensuring that they're rehomed. That would be like a form of taking responsibility. But in addition to like everything else, I think we should do to combat climate change. But with regard to how it has impacted those other countries, there are other ways that we can assume responsibility and hopefully try to make amends for what we've caused.
Agent Tim.
Yeah, so the idea that, these countries are going to start suing bigger countries is kind of insane. One, it's not feasible. Two, it's just going to escalate a lot of things. If you just piss off the US enough, we might just do another coup in South America. Another thing is that, like, I'm a huge proponent of Monroe Doctrine. I really love the idea, right? We should annex Canada, liberate the Canadian, and then we should go out and help out South America. We should help these other countries that, we really fucked. And I really think the only feasible way to do this is nuclear. I think anyone who's against nuclear is, one, either not read up on it or you're extremely scared and you fell into propaganda. But the really lab-grown meat's a huge fucking deal. Connor, that was a great idea. Nuclear is a huge way, just getting away from fossil fuels in general. But, we need to help out the damage we've caused, but we can't have suing other countries. It's insane.
So before we get into it, if you guys don't like the idea of suing, then it'd just be reparations by any other name.
Also bad.
Fair enough. All right, but
well, it's like Prime. I think there's like a legitimate difference, right? So when we talk about reparations, most of the time we're talking about like an overall plan.
Let me finish my point.
To solve this, right? Whereas like if you're saying like, oh, you just have the
let me finish my point. Holy shit! I gotta say it like 3 times. Let me finish my point. All right. I don't know. Maybe then you understand my point. Then you can respond to my point. That might be how that works. And so I think my only problem is simply a reparations framework, because it simply relies on countries doing these things like voluntarily, without like any sort of force of law behind these things. Then we saw like what happened in Haiti a few years ago, right? And during the Obama administration, there was that terrible earthquake that happened there. Lots of people died. It was quite tragic.
Oh yeah.
The world.
Oh, yeah.
Remember the world coming together, saying, "Oh, how that we were gonna send them money."
I think there was a concert.
Yeah, there was a concert. Yeah, so star-studded. There were promises all over the world, like, "Oh, we're definitely gonna help the Haitians make sure to get back on their feet." That might even come. I didn't actually give a shit. They definitely said that. They definitely liked getting a pat on the back for how great they were, and the money didn't come. They never actually gave a shit. So in that case, right, like when it comes to all these other disasters, right, and you can't blame like climate change on earthquakes, I don't think. But for these other natural disasters, I don't expect anything better. Like that was a test run for these type of things, right? And I don't expect anything better. So I'm saying like putting it within the legal framework. However, if we can actually do better, right? Let's say we can have some sort of reparation type situation, which countries will stick to their promises, and I'm for that, right? I'm for one or the other. These people just need their helps. Like Tonsil said, that like Maldives, right? will disappear. It's going to be a past tense country. So in that case, yes, we should be providing citizenship. What will happen is, at this point, you're seeing it happen right now. This isn't a future problem. There's a problem that's happening right this instance, right? Because climate change is affecting, for instance, farming in other nations, right? Making it impossible for them to farm. And then those people are either hungry, or simply that if their way of life, if they're farmers themselves, has been destroyed, well, they try to go to other countries, other richer nations, right? And they end up at our, I don't know, southern border, for instance. And then we tell them you must be bad people because you didn't come in through our very limited pipeline, right? This issue is actually happening as we speak, and it's causing wars as we speak, right? Like with Syria, like that traces back to a problem with a drought that's been happening in that country. So these things are not something that will happen at some point in the future that eventually we'll have to deal with. Happening right this instance. What are we going to do with them? What are we going to do with the refugees? These are the climate refugees this is creating. If we don't have a plan, it's going to get ugly. I guarantee you it's going to get ugly. So yes, let's have some sort of reparations, in my opinion, for this. And if not, if you won't, then they should be able to be sued, these nations, if they don't seem to care. And I don't think the U.S. is going to give a shit. But I'm done. Joe?
Yeah, so to kind of like center what you said a little bit, right? Because there's a lot of things happening in climate in real time, which is important to acknowledge, right? Like the idea of climate refugees that already happened, right? With Honduras, Costa Rica, and Nicaragua. They got hit with 2 Category 4 hurricanes in the span of less than 7 days. And then those individuals migrated to the United States. And then now in the United States, like, where the fuck did all these crazy immigrants come from? And it's like, maybe from the country that got hit by 2 hurricanes. And then you hear people argue, it's like, well, why didn't they stay there? And it's like, are you literally that stupid, or do you just not read the news? Another thing to think about is like something that I'm really very passionate about is just farm use. And when I look at farm use instead of groundwater use, there are 3 nations that are leading their groundwater use by huge margins. You have India, huge gap, United States, small gap, China, large gap, then Pakistan, Iran, Mexico, and Saudi Arabia. And those are the countries that are leading the way at groundwater use. The problem with using too much groundwater is that it's draining all the wells, only but internationally. And then another problem with that, there's certain solutions of there, right? You can divert and you can divert and like haul water to alternate sources, like nearby rivers and lakes. In a lot of areas across the world, that's not possible. Another option is just reducing your water use, which we tried in America, but then Donald Trump started to fucking shit tweet about his shower pressure without the acknowledgement of like, hey, like this is bigger than you being able to fucking bidet your asshole all the way out of your mouth. Like, it's a bit more complicated than that. And then like another option, right, just for the well problem, which is a really unpopular one, would be to abandon like things that require a lot of water, like irrigation. But the problem is, for those of you who know anything about farms, like there's some areas of the United States that like there's okay, let me make this as simple as possible, right? There's there if irrigated land provides higher crop yields, how are you going to convince people to not use irrigated land? But another problem with that is that, like, within the United States, especially in the central and Midwest, like, it's not even suitable for unirrigated dry land because it doesn't exist anymore. So, like, we're seeing us gradually just fuck this planet on every end, which is why one of my biggest prescriptions, like the thing that I think is incredibly important, is that these countries that we have been at odds with for generations, we have to squash this beef and understand that we can't argue with each other if there's no people left. So we have to make a collective effort, every country, to solve these problems together. That's going to mean like we have some ideological differences. That means we're going to have a lot of cultural differences. But we have to stop participating in things like this anti-communist propaganda that the United States perpetuates against countries like Russia and China, understanding that we have to work together. The anti-xenophobia that exists within the Middle East, like countries like Iran, Pakistan, India, Iraq, Afghanistan, we have to fucking just stop this shit. Because while there's all these climate conflicts and international conflicts, we're literally watching the world die in front of us. And I think the best way and the difficult route, but the route that we should take, is working together as a world, not exclusively as individual countries.
Yeah. Anyone else? Counterpoints?
All right. So, cold take or hot take, you take it. If we as a species die for not having enough fucking water, then we goddamn deserve it. 2/3 of the fucking planet is water. We have technology called desalination. It's literally the ability to fucking use salt water for fucking irrigation. We have pipelines that are literally thousands of miles long in petroleum. We could do the same thing with water. Not just that, but slow drip agriculture exists in the state of Israel. Israel is basically a desert. They have been able to create forests because they use something called slow drip agriculture. It's basically a hydroponic system that only gives an efficient amount of water to the crops, and as a result, they do have like extremely efficient yields. So it's not that these aren't problems; it's that we need to address these problems in an intelligent and coherent manner. And I think that's probably the thing that I agree with Joe Lewis on, is that we need to address it in an intelligent and coherent manner. The problem that we have right now is that there are people, pretty much everybody in this room, because we live in the modern world, who have a shitload of fucking people who are incredibly technologically competent, and we have the money, and we have the resources, that we're not going to bear the brunt of these problems. If Los Angeles County runs out, or if fucking Nevada runs out of water, the United States as a whole could afford to get a direct fucking line Nevada, create an artificial lake, and literally pump in the fucking Pacific Ocean every day and sustain a dumb fuck city that we built for no reason in the middle of the desert. Okay, we can afford this shit. Bangladesh, on the other hand, they can't, because they don't have the infrastructure in order to do it. They're basically what do you call it? Desalinated water. Their freshwater sources are increasingly becoming salinated, and we don't care. Because Bangladesh is a Muslim majority nation. It's trapped between two of our geopolitical rivals and allies, which is India and China. And if a bunch of Muslims in between India and China end up starving to death, we don't really care. So this is true. And this is a problem, because we are talking about tens of millions or hundreds of millions of people who are going to starve to death, or not have access to clean water, or they're going to go to war for resources if we don't unfuck ourselves. But just to kind of round this out into answering Sonsol's question, desalinization and lab-grown meat are incredible and carbon capture are incredible technological opportunities that we are not taking advantage of. And basically, liberal progressives in California have shot down desalinization in San Diego like 18 goddamn times, because they want to preserve some random fucking tadpole in some tributary fucking river. If we're going to survive this fucking climate crisis, we're going to have to make hard choices, and Californians are going to have to kill, like, random weird fucking esoteric fucking tadpoles that only exist like this one fucking mudfish fucking tributary, and you're gonna have to care more about.
I have two questions.
But then how are we gonna host all the galas to raise money and awareness for those animals? Like, it's
when Prime
is
dude, when Prime was talking about fucking honkies raising money to pretend to send to Haiti and then send like fucking 1%.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah.
Oh, dude, yeah. When he was talking about honkies fucking sending 1% of their fucking their fucking charities to Haiti, he was basically talking about the state of California. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
it's so
these
it's so the
tadpoles-
wives of rich
Very
husbands
quick,
have
very-
something to do. Okay.
I just
he'll have
wanted
us
to
a problem.
ask a question about the tadpoles really quick. Is the reason that they want to preserve the tadpoles, is there anything else? Is there any other reasonable reason why they might say, hey, well, we might not want to kill all these tadpoles because it might fuck up something further down the ecological chain? And then also,
NIMBY,
what is
NIMBY shit. NIMBY. It's all a pretext. They don't want it in their fucking backyard. They don't want a big fucking ugly, fucking 20-acre desal plant on their beautiful, pristine fucking coastline. It's NIMBY shit. And this is the thing. It is beautiful. I love California.
Thank you.
The The people are simultaneously the best people in the world and the worst people in the world.
Yes.
So, but that being said, it's NIMBY shit. It's not in my backyard shit. It has nothing to do with the fucking tadpoles. It's San Diegans. I don't even know if that's the word. San Diegans. It's them wanting to fucking sniff their own farts while not having to make any hard choices.
Well, something too, which is important, and Agent brought it up, which is why I think the argument for nuclear, when people advocate for it, is fucking dog shit. Is you have to also understand that, and this is brought up, like a book I'm going to cite for my argument here is "Confessions of a Rogue Nuclear Regulator" by Gregory Jasko, where he laid out very clearly that even though we had a huge tragedy from a nuclear plant, we still haven't learned from the safety regulations that we have to update these things. Like, we have over 400 nuclear power reactors currently operating, and then we have 50 that are currently under construction in countries like ones I described earlier, like the United Arab Emirates, China, India, Pakistan. So one thing that we had to consider is that the cost to update the current facilities in the United States, as an example, as well as building new infrastructure, is prohibitively expensive. And for states like Texas, it's going to be a hard sell when they're being pitched on this idea that, oh, like, you can do wind and other types of things that are significantly cheaper than nuclear. So the question I have is, how do you advocate for the rebuilding and the building and upkeep of the infrastructure of nuclear plants? Because if that's the first step. The first step is updating these plants and updating regulations, adding things like filters to prevent radioactive releases and reactor contaminant buildings, and the exact same problem that happened in Fukushima. And then on top of that, how do you pitch it to the layman person where you don't sound like you're from Mars when you're advocating for these things? Because most people who advocate for nuclear don't know how to talk to normal people.
The immediate answer is people are going to have to die. That's the answer, because we're not going to take things seriously until people start dying.
Dying from the reactors failing, or
dying from climate change. So even I basically work in an industry. It's a construction negotiation between construction and insurance companies. Even the insurance companies are seeing their costs go up. Even like rednecks, and I hate saying rednecks because I love them. Even people in Texas are saying this is the hottest year I've ever fucking seen, and I live in Texas. I've seen, I've had like 10 record storms in the past decade. I don't remember ever being this bad. You're even hearing Republicans and conservatives saying that. So if you're hearing Republicans and conservatives saying that, then it is going to get bad enough that people are going to take the climate crisis seriously.
Let's go to Ancient and Hans.
So Joe, yeah, you're acting like Fukushima happened because just safety reasons and someone was incompetent or whatever. You forget it was hit by an earthquake and then a tsunami.
So it was a climate. So how do you advocate?
Yeah, but it wasn't due to any. It wasn't.
I'm not letting you off the hook. Regulation. You know goddamn well safety regulations played a part of that. If you know anything about Fukushima, you know that.
Oh,
and we
really?
haven't updated the regulations. Which is why, again, I'll cite the book again, Confessions of a Rogue Nuclear
the U.S. should,
Regulator.
but Fukushima was not in the U.S.
But to be clear, we have reactors in the United States. So when we're building these infrastructures
that aren't getting hit with earthquake and tsunamis,
we're not there yet, my friend. But when we're in a situation,
a little bit.
So my point here is that as the climate progressively gets worse, you're going to have to do all of these things at once. So while I'm in full support of improving improving the nuclear infrastructure that we currently have, we can't sell it to conservatives because they always argue about expense, and then they cut costs like we saw in Texas. So the question I still propose is, how do we advertise this to individuals that nuclear is safe, despite the fact we haven't really updated regulations there? But that's a conversation for another day. But how do we advocate for the layman?
Modern technology is extremely safe with nuclear.
Right, but I'm saying the regulations haven't been updated.
We should. We should. So but it's kind of hard when people like you scaremonger and scare.
I'm not scaremongering. That's literally the proposal. It's not scaremongering nuclear. It's the consequences of the problem.
You cited some rogue fucking nuclear dude, and you cited Fukushima that's normal.
No, but because I don't think you're really quite understanding my argument here. Is that if we need to I argue that we need to tackle nuclear reactors to yesterday. This is something that we should have handled yesterday. However, we are not. So how do you advocate at the federal level so that we actually improve this infrastructure? Because right now we're at the point that these facilities are going to start failing over time. And when they start failing over time, in consequence with poor climate in consequence with poor regulations, we are going to see Americans dying, and they're
You
already
do that
dying.
by
from a lack of-
educating and supporting the cause. You don't have to by scaring the fuck out of people and getting
That's
them off
not
of an
policy. Educating people is not a policy prescription. I can't write a bill and bring that to the House and say we can educate people on nuclear.
Let's go.
What I can do is advocate for the building of infrastructure on nuclear. So I'm asking you, what's the policy prescription there? Not the moral claim that we got to educate.
Let's go to Hans and then Layman. Encounter.
Yeah, the biggest. I hate to go like all the way back to like shit on Connor, but like, bro, I don't think a strategy is to say we're not going to do anything until everyone's dying, and then like hopefully we'll do something or that technology will solve it. I think that's both like the laziest and the most doomer way of like looking at the climate crisis. If we're actually going to solve this, again, I don't disagree that like people are currently dying, people are going to die, but I think pretending that like we should just like hold out hope that like there's going to be some like magic tech bubble that'll like fix all of this and not start working now, whether it's through like international alliances or like international agreements like the Paris Climate Accords. Again, like they're not enough. We probably talked about this before. Like pretending that we're gonna get saved by some like magic, like Elon Musk style, like, you know, like tech or like some shit like that. It just feels really both lazy and kind of stupid. And also, I don't like the idea because conservatives, like I get it, like they don't care about the climate crisis. It's never affected them until now. Now it has affected them. It seems like their first instinct is eco-fascism, which I really dislike, saying like, oh, someone has to die, so it might as well be all the brown people. And it's like, what the fuck, guys? Maybe if you pretended like it was real, like, you know, 20 years ago, we could have solved some of this shit. So I'm just like, I don't think that you're coming at it from that place. I'm just saying that your like specific position, like of like just waiting until enough like white people or like enough Americans die or like are displaced. By that point, we're gonna have like a lot less options, and none of those options are going to be good. So I just don't think that's the right way in terms of advocacy, in terms of like what we should be pushing for right now.
I don't think his point was that it's when we should start doing stuff is when people start dying. I think it's that's when people are going to start caring enough to actually start doing something.
Yeah, it's descriptive, not prescriptive.
Let's go to Layman, then Counterpoints can respond to everything. Amazing.
You're muted.
This is Canadian wisdom at its best. Wow.
Fuck you. So anyway, I want to go back to what Joe and Agent were talking about real quick, because I agree with Joe completely about there needing to be more regulations. Now, I think that the way that you can sell something like nuclear, though, to maybe more Republican-leaning people who are probably a little more fiscally conservative, I would assume, because they're fucking Republicans. Something that you could do is maybe when it comes to specifically industries that deal in environmental goods and services, you could offer business startups and small businesses and stuff like that tax loopholes and tax cuts if they are, and only if they switch to a nuclear model, or if they utilize that business from a nuclear model, and then that might create market incentives to build other nuclear power plants. That's the way that I see that being sold to right wingers in the U.S. I don't know what you think about that, but I'm in favor of like all the regulation shit that you said plus that. Or I think the Republicans wouldn't like the regulation shit, but
Sure,
all the other shit, I think they could get behind. Is all.
Yeah, like again, like for nuclear, I'm in support of it. I just think the arguments for them are pretty poor, because while the upfront costs are incredibly high, it's going to pay for itself over time in a matter of, I think it's like 4 to 8 years, depending on certain estimates and where you look. But the problem is that on its face, you're going to get people like fucking Ted Cruzine, who's going to be like, wind cheaper. And it's like, well, what about the windmills that fucking froze during a climate crisis in your state? We'll just put oil in them. And it's like, all right, because
put nuclear in them.
Because on its face for Texas, like one of the things that they did to cut costs was to prevent oil, like different basically, I'm gonna fucking paraphrase this to the best of my ability. Right? They forgot to put the lube in the fans. So when the fans finally froze, then they're like, fuck, what do? We forgot the KY. And it's like, no shit, Sherlock, because when you install these fucking fans, you dumb fucks, Lean Cruzine, you're supposed to put the lube in there so in case when it freezes, it spins.
What do you expect from a state that has been defunding sex education for years? They're not going to understand the point of KY. Obviously. obviously.
Anyway.
Yeah, so like, so to your point,
No,
though,
but-
like, yeah, like that's the
You
thing. Where,
always
like, I
move
want
your
the
fans. Like,
like,
come on.
like one thing that you could do is a prescriptive policy, right?
I
Or
would
not really
know.
prescriptive, but just like to
So.
explain to people that look, like, yes, the upfront costs of improving these nuclear plants are going to be expensive, but then you also have to say we haven't been doing it anyway. So the longer that we put this off, the more expensive it's going to get, and then it's going to hit a point where some of these plants are going to hit in terms of critical levels due to poor regulation. So we're going to see some type of, like, again, one climate crisis away. They're going, why was there an earthquake in insert state that's never had earthquake before? And it's like, isn't that where there's a nuclear plant? Yeah,
Yeah,
but it's
and-
probably nothing. And it's like,
Well,
okay, well, fuck me.
That's a
Yeah,
direct
and
result of
the
fracking, so.
yeah, and the rhetoric surrounding that too. Like, I think it would be a good idea to put that forward. It's like, this is something that we that like is going to have to happen, as opposed to this is something that we want to do. Because I think a lot of Republicans have this really, really like anxious, fear-ridden gut reaction to when people say, I want to do nuclear. But if you make it sound like, well, this is just something that has to happen anyway because we're already not putting fucking anything into it anyway. It's already expensive as fuck. Like, treating it as an inevitability like you did, I think is a good idea.
Well, yeah, that's really that's my whole argument.
Oh, my God. All right,
It's
so
inevitable.
So let's go to counterpoints, and then Maddie. And at some point, I actually do want to get back to the question I actually asked, but counterpoints.
Okay, yeah. So basically, Hans, I was being more descriptive than prescriptive. I'm not saying we should wait for fucking brown people to die and some white people to die before we do something about climate change. I'm just saying that if you want white people to do something, you have to affect them directly with it, just as a matter of historical perspective.
I can vibe with that.
Yeah.
I
then-
personally want all white people to die, though. So
Right, he is Canadian, so that makes sense.
I am Canadian.
But as far as the magical technology
What,
indictment, the magical technology, and here's the thing. I'm getting into my 30s now, so I've lived through a couple of like near fatality catastrophes since I was born. When I was born, it was that we were gonna all die in a nuclear holocaust. Between the Soviet Union and the United States, we actually came close a couple of times. It was also the ozone layer was going to burn off because of fluorocarbons, and basically we stopped using fluorocarbons, and the ozone layer recreated itself within like a decade. It was also acid rain due to smog and pollution, which was destroying plant life, and that basically we changed the way that we're polluting the world, and we were able to cover those things. So it's not a question of whether or not like magic technology is going to come out of the fucking nowhere. It's the fact that we've faced problems before as a species, and we seem pretty good at adapting. So basically, again, I was saying we're not going to do it until people die, but I think that even conservatives know the writing is on the wall. 10 to 20 years ago, conservatives were saying that because they were bought by big, oil and gas, they were saying that climate change wasn't real. Now they're saying climate change is real, but they don't know how big of an impact it is. 5 to 10 years from now, they're going to say, hey, climate change. Turns out climate change was real the whole time, but we're going to go with fusion power plants brought to you by ExxonMobil. So just give it fucking 5 to 10 years, and Republicans will find a way to sell out you and everybody in the American public to power companies. But the writing is on the wall. And the reason why I'm saying that is because I have a friend who works for an energy company. He literally designs the turbines, and all of the energy companies are looking at renewables. They're looking at things that aren't even renewables. They're literally looking at hydroelectric dams that feed water back into the system again so they can use the energy again. They're literally looking for perpetual motion machines that somehow create energy. And the other thing with the grid, final point, is basically that there's a problem with the grid. And the grid basically needs because of the way that we consume energy, there's peaks and troughs. And what we need technology that is capable of handling the peaks and the troughs. So basically what you need is a flat line, whether that's fusion or fission, doesn't really matter. Fusion isn't available yet, but you need a flat line of energy that is available at all times. Then you need quick reaction natural gas to handle the peaks. And then you can use renewables as an augment. But you can't rely on renewables for the power grid because basically if you have a slow wind day or if you have a slow sun day, then you can't capture that energy and feed it to the grid. So I'll leave it there. Yield.
Maddie, then Biggs.
Yeah. So I know a little bit about the history of nuclear energy in this country because I was fascinated by it and fell down a Wikipedia hole a long time ago. So I wanted to share a little bit about why it became essentially untenable in the United States, despite taking off in other countries. Because there are countries like South Korea and France that even after the 3 Mile Island disaster of 1979, were still able to continue construction of all of these reactors. So the issue with the Americans' approach to it, because I also agree that like nuclear energy is one of the cleanest forms of energy that you can have. But long term, I just don't know if it's necessarily like the go-to solution for us in this moment. So in the 1950s, when this technology first came out, there was a massive rush to build nuclear power plants. Americans wanted like gigantic power plants that stressed their supply chain, which then led to an increase in costs, especially because the United States does not have a central nationalized energy provider. So to contrast that with France, France has a centralized, like nationalized energy provider, and they worked in tandem with a single company to essentially construct all of their reactors. And another issue that the United States ran into was that the regulations for these reactors, especially after 1979 and the 3 Mile Island disaster, was that the regulations for these plants would change so frequently that often they'd be in the middle of construction of a new plant and the regulations would change. And so they would have to go back and then retrofit essentially to accommodate to be in line with these new regulations. So one thing that like South Korea did really well was that they established standardized regulations from the get-go and made it the process transparent, so that as these power plants were being developed, companies weren't like having to mitigate risk, thinking, "Oh God, we might start construction on this, and then all of a sudden it will no longer be within regulation." So from a policy standpoint, I think to speak to, I think what Agent 10 and Joe Lewis were advocating for, stricter safety guidelines, but also just standardized safety guidelines across the board. And something that if I were a company looking to invest in potentially like, you know, having a venture, like having a new power plant, I would want to know that I'm secure in making that investment, because the regulations aren't just going to change out of the blue while I'm in the middle of construction. So if we see nuclear power as the future, I would say that from a policy standpoint would be the pragmatic approach.
Biggs, and then maybe I'll try to get us back onto actual topic.
Yeah, I was gonna kind of
Nuclear power.
but I actually grew up.
The plans, please.
I actually grew up next to a nuclear power plant, basically all through my middle school and high school years. But what I was going to say was overall, nuclear power is the most beneficial dollar put in for dollar return of all the energy sources. Well, it is a much higher upfront cost. Overall, it does pay for itself, like Joe said, within 7 to 8 years. But again, I think we need to get rid of the stigma of the issues when you look at the actual problems that we've had throughout history, whether it be Fukushima, whether it be Chernobyl, there are specific things that cause those issues that were not necessarily due to the actual nuclear itself. It was building things near fault lines or having very lax regulations, especially with Chernobyl. So, as far as that's concerned, I think that the issue that we need to tackle here is: do we, as these first world countries, like the United States, do we help these other countries kind of get to where we are at now? Because basically what caused all the pollution to begin with, which is what we're talking about here, is global warming and things like that, was the industrial revolution of the United States, the industrial revolution of the European countries, and now the industrial revolution, which is taking off in China and India, and eventually that's actually going to happen in Africa. So now, and as well as other places too, but that's the next big boom that's going to happen, right? So, do we want these countries and these societies to have the same fossil fuels that we use and then pollute more, or do we want to help give them a leg up and say, hey, we've already gotten things where we can improve the environment by either nuclear or by solar or wind or whatever, hydroelectric. So I think that's where we need to focus on, is really getting to the you know giving them the things that they need. Maybe not like completely financing everything, but like kind of helping them out, giving them a helping hand. So that's where I kind of want to get back on topic as we go. But thanks again.
Yeah, Biggs, very quick to your point. Like the reason why I brought up Fukushima, is because like not dead, but closed nuclear plants make me fucking nervous, bro.
Yeah.
Like for example, Diablo Canyon in California
That
has
doesn't
2
sound
nuclear
foreboding at
plants.
all, but go ahead.
Yeah. Diablo Canyon has 2, and they both
Right.
closed for the same thing, policy
Yeah.
problems. And then on top of that, they found out like a little news story that kind of just went across for the Obama administration.
Yeah.
Is that geologists were like, "Hey, there are multiple fault lines in Diablo Canyon," and then it's like, "I'm sorry, what?"
So that was a mistake on the engineering side. They should never allow those things to be built there. So like
exactly.
I don't. If you guys have ever read, I live next to the power plant near Detroit, right? And there's
Good
actually
Lord.
a book written about how we actually almost lost Detroit due to a nuclear meltdown. There's actually a reactor under the reactor that's currently still operational in where I grew up in Monroe, Michigan. So I understand where.
Wait, you're talking about, not to dox yourself, are you talking about Palisades?
No, I'm
'Cause
talking
that's the one that
about
I know of that
Fermi,
closed, but-
Fermi 2, Fermi
Oh,
1.
fuck.
Yeah. So I don't live there anymore. That's where my family's from.
Okay, good.
I don't live there, so I'm not doxing myself. But anyways,
Yeah,
so I
okay.
understand where people are coming from as far as like these things. But I think with the technology we have now, especially with if we're building current modern nuclear facilities, I think that's where we can really help these countries, and they can actually be able to, if we build them for them now, or at least help them build them, they can actually provide power for other countries while they're getting themselves built up their own grid. And I think that can kind of be like an incentivized way to help build these other countries without providing too much. Because obviously, like being more conservative, I don't like too much financial aid for like foreign aid and stuff like that. But I think these are things we can get much more benefit in the long term.
Yeah. Another plant that makes me nervous
boy.
is Crystal River in Florida,
Yeah.
which is right on the Gulf.
So
Cool.
I'd like to
I mean, a lot
maybe
of them buildings make me nervous in California
try
because my house shook from a tiny earthquake. So
to get back on topic. I'm gonna try my best. You've been fighting me the whole way. All right. So you can sue. Going back to the actual topic, you can sue for all kinds of things, right? And so could we see a situation where we sue maybe for citizenship, saying that now that our homes are effectively gone, right? That our population should be able to move where it likes. It's not instead of creating a guaranteed refugee process, we can get ahead of it and saying, okay, you all are definitely more responsible for all these things, and our population should be able to move to your nations. It's one solution.
Are you basically just talking about like climate refugees, basically?
Yeah, this is what I've been talking about. Yeah, that's what I was talking about.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, climate refugees. But to be able to maybe get ahead of the problem, one way is maybe to take legal action against these nations. But again, if you just want a quote-unquote reparations plan, right, without legal, whatever, it doesn't. I don't care. But the point is to provide solutions for these people. So that's great. Or providing them with technologies to deal with the problem of global warming in terms like of farming, right? If you're experiencing a drought, okay, well, let's provide you technologies so that you can mitigate that, right? If that talks about like building a massive canal for you, okay, then let's do that. Something to assist them. So there's a number of options, right, on the table. And so should we not be providing these things to these people? Go ahead, Agent 10, and then we'll go to Layman and Connor.
Cool. What court are we suing in? Who's in charge of said court? Who's going to be responsible of any of this? Like, how are we going to measure how much the U.S. is at fault? How much is China at fault? How much is India at fault? What if certain populations like the global south don't want to move to a country that is more at fault, etc.? This is just never going to...
I got a legal team. I got a legal team.
Yeah, so one thing you didn't hear what I actually said, that like there's more than one solution, right? So that was just one idea as something you could provide. Not everyone, of course, is going to want to move to the States or whatever, right? But if their country literally will not be on the map, then maybe they actually want, that might be an option they want. So
Right. So
yeah, so like that's
I could
so
play
it's a
devil's
menu,
advocate.
your energy.
menu on the
You usually
table.
do. Sorry.
It says it's not option on the table. Okay, but beyond that, again, we can provide ways to help fix their countries. And fix their food sources, help them provide start up industries that are sustainable, right? So like so that they're better employed. If you are mostly an agrarian society, right? Let's help maybe transition away from that and start up industries that'll be sustainable, useful for the global infrastructure, right? The global supply chain. All things you can do. And again, if you don't care about, I don't really care whether it's through the courts or whatever, right? I'm just talking about how do we deal with these refugees that are and that will be created and are being created right at this moment. So like, I don't care how we do it. And the details are for someone else to work out. Layman, if he wants to go, and then counterpoints and Sansel.
Yeah, I had to take the jacket off because I think I might be speaking for America a bit.
Mhm.
So, birthright citizenship revoked. Justin Trudeau just took it. So
You're not affiliated with us, you fucking Canuck. What the fuck you trying to say? Like, you shut the fuck up and stay in your goddamn lane. Sorry. Continue.
okay. So basically, I guess I don't really okay, so these countries that are disproportionately affected by like the problems that would exist in places like China and the United States, they're not really polluting. So I'm fine with them developing, obviously, because I like free trade, but I don't think that like particular foreign aid to that would specifically help the goal of like attenuating the climate crisis that's affecting them. I think like I don't know how you would like interact with them. At best, the most that I would be willing to concede is like, and this isn't something that this is something a little iffy about because you'd have to get the globe behind this. Is something similar to like the refugee crisis, except you would have to like get everybody together and like accept like, okay, we are going to take like this proportionate amount of people from these different countries. Like you'd have to do that globally, and I don't know. That seems like really, really idealistic, given the fact that there are a lot of countries that like turn to like some right-wing populist shit in response to the Syrian refugee crisis. I mean, I'm sure Canada will take some, and the U.S. might take some, but like you know, places like fucking Hungary aren't.
This is
But
so I was gonna to address that point, right, Layman. This is exactly the problem. Is that because this seems like such a down the road thing, right? Humans are terrible with long-term planning on complex issues, right? We're willing. We will run into these political issues where they don't want to, right? Again, that's why I think there's some sort of judicial force behind these things. But if we don't, I think the cost on the other side will actually be bigger.
Yeah, sure, but my point is you have to be able to sell it though, right? So like if countries aren't doing their fair share and taking their fair people in these other countries, that means the countries that'd be more accepting might accept them like disproportionately, and then right-wing populism might start arising there that I don't fucking want. Like in Sweden where that happened. It didn't happen in Canada because we took like a pretty reasonable number of Syrian refugees and were able to like sell everybody on it and like integrate them into the population really, really well. But in places like Sweden, they took like 150,000 refugees for like a 10 million population in Sweden, whereas Canada took like I think 50K, and we have like a 38 million population. Like there's ways that you have to sell this to people who are right wing that you have to take into consideration, or this shit is just, it's not only not going to happen, but it's going to get worse. Now, I'm not saying I agree with that. I like immigration. I'm a fucking Canuck. Okay. I like immigration, but, you know, I'm just saying that these problems seem like very, very idealistic to solve. I think the best thing you can do is just focus on your own countries. So the US, I think, has to like focus on developing itself into these options. Them focusing on the globe, I just think is going to pivot too much away from that focus and isn't necessarily going to work. So, yeah.
Counterpoints and Sansel.
Yeah, so there's actually an incredibly simple solution. Which is that
Connor.
Connor.
And
Connor. Oh my-
the
FBI, bro.
the
Every
solution
fucking time.
has been censored.
What about now?
No, you're good.
The CIA has gotten into Connor's.
Joe Biden.
Uh,
Joe Biden's at it again.
Joe Biden.
Censoring conservatives.
yeah, the
Fucking
counter.
my internet. What about now?
Yeah, you're good. You're good.
Hello?
You're good.
You're perfect.
All right, I'm fucked with my internet. So, anyways, so you regionalize this problem, okay? So basically, the United States of America is responsible for the Americas. We're also responsible for everybody east of Japan because everybody east of Japan is pretty fucking based. I want the entire kingdom of Tonga to move to Central Florida. So if you're Tongan, fucking come to Orlando, okay? I'll cook you some fucking meals. You can cook me some fucking meals. It'll be awesome. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the Kingdom of Tonga, it's basically an entire fucking civilization with people who look like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Okay, so
watch
that's
their entrance at any Olympic like ceremonies, opening ceremonies. They are gorgeous,
yeah.
and like
All right.
oh my god, California will also welcome you. But go on.
Anyway, so but you can regionalize it too. So basically, like Bangladesh, India, and China are both going to be large powers, regardless of the climate crisis, just by virtue of population and economy. So they're going to have to divide up who they want in Asia. Same thing with Europe. Same thing with the Middle East and North Africa. Basically, anybody with a functioning state is going to have to carve out a regional sphere of influence that they think is acceptable for people who are dispossessed, for them to be able to move safely into areas that have technological sophistication. And I think that's the only way that you address this. Because if we're like, why the fuck are we going to fly Bangladeshis to America if burning jet fuel is the part of the fucking problem? Why don't they basically
I don't even know
go?
what you're talking about. What the fuck are you talking about right now, Connor?
We're talking about
Buying
climate refugees.
Bangladeshis? Like, what are you? What?
We're talking about where do climate refugees go?
Okay.
Yeah, so my solution would be they go to places that have a similar culture and are willing to accept them. So that's pretty much the fucking solution.
Okay, sounds well.
Yeah, I was just gonna play devil's advocate because it seems like everyone mostly agrees here.
No, we
when
don't.
we're talking about
No, we don't. We literally
seems
don't.
like it. I feel like in general, people all understand that the climate crisis is happening and that we need to do something to help the people that are being dispossessed. When we're talking about like suing, though, there are courts that you can sue other countries. Like one country can sue another through the UN, right? We can also, if we're trying to think of a metric by which we would, a smaller country might sue a larger country that has been the primary driver of climate change. We can think of things like the cost of the real estate of that of the area that's fucked up, plus the emotional damages or whatever, the potential that it had to grow over the next 10 years, and then give that money to the people that were displaced, and that could be one metric by which we do it. I think the idea that there's no way to do it is wrong, and that if there was a way to do it, I think that it would be nice to be able to have those people be compensated in some way for the shit that happened as a result of us driving our civilization like way, way, way above everybody else.
We're not going to, though.
I'm the
Like-
legal team for your
like-
dog, okay? We use the nuclear power,
Yeah,
right? We use the nuclear power. We resurrect OJ's legal team. We get the legal team of Casey Anthony, and then we say, listen, we had to come together for the most important job of our life. We gotta sue these fucking countries. I think they can
Suicide
do it.
Squad.
If they can, if they can,
Oh,
if they
great.
can deal with the
Our lawyers. You guys are fucking assholes.
listen,
Anyway.
they found a way. They found a way to get a child murderer and a football Hall of Famer just out. Sorry,
Listen,
allegedly.
alleged child
And
murderer,
they're both living
okay?
in Florida. Fucking based, my dude. So we gotta bring
I
him
know.
back.
All right, anyways.
Bring it back for
no.
one last run.
Okay, here's the fucking point. You know why the United States is oftentimes not a signatory to fucking international treaties? It's because we don't want to fucking abide by them. So even if the UN came out with a fucking ruling saying like, hey, United States, you're the most technologically sophisticated power, you owe fucking Bangladesh fucking $2 trillion. The United States is going to say, get fucked. And that's going to be the end of the fucking discussion. So basically, no, I don't like, even if there was a mechanism, even if there was a ruling, that doesn't mean that we're going to pay. And I think that it's much more realistic to focus on like resettlement, technology, and moving forward than it is to fucking, you know, basically focus on this. Because even if you got through the courts, even if there was a ruling, pretty much like Biggs, Agent 10, and I are going to say, I was born in fucking the late 80s. I had no choice in the technology that my country was going to use. You're stealing my fucking tax-paying dollars to pay some dude fucking around the fucking world. You can get fucked. If they want to move here and work, that's totally cool. If you fucking some technology so we can make your country less shitty, that's cool. But I'm not paying for your fucked up country. Sorry.
I have a little more compassion than that, but yeah, I do agree with you, Connor, for sure.
I'm a douchebag. That's why I'm here.
So you're
especially if we look at sorry, one really quickly.
Please.
Can I say thank you? Yeah, I mean, I also it's hard for me also to hear when someone's like, "Oh, you're fucked up country" or whatever, because I look at why a lot of these countries have political turmoil, and partially now, of course, climate change is wreaking havoc on a lot of the natural resources that these countries were otherwise rich in. But going back even further, I mean, like Western imperialism like is to blame for a lot of this as well. So when if we want, I know this is a climate discussion, but like I've talked about this before, where if we want to talk about culpability for what created these like incredibly hostile and like really almost tragic like countries and why there's so much political turmoil and violence, a lot of that is directly correlated to the meddling of not only the United States, but also like European countries that goes as far back as turn of the century, where essentially we were just there to rape them of resources and extract wealth while leaving the actual residents there and like indigenous people with nothing. So like, if we want to talk about like, you can deal with your own fucking country and your bullshit, it's like, well, like, let's be honest about why they have bullshit. Like, we have a hand in that too.
But that's why
Then
okay.
Well, just really quickly, then we'll cover Iraq, and England gets to pay everybody else. Okay.
Yeah.
deal.
Fuck England. Fuck England.
So yes, so I
Finally,
do
something we
agree
can
with
all
Matty
agree
Cakes,
on.
with this take for sure. I do think though that you are kind of forgetting what things that the Western world was able to improve some things in different countries as well. So there is a little bit of a trade off there, but I do agree with you. The overall take, especially throughout history, especially further past history, is a lot more detrimental. But I do think in modern history we are making strides to do at least a little bit better as far as like giving some type of at least trying to help these countries, you know, with aid and stuff like that. So I think it's a little bit kind of hand waving away the benefits that Western society has had, at least a little bit.
Okay.
But
I just what I was going to say before was just that like that's why I sort of prescribed like people sort of sticking to their own shit. I think that's how you like provide accountability, right? Like a little people maybe, I don't know, like imposing sanction like or whatever for like climate change. I know that nobody like said that or anything, but I think that like as far as like the accountability thing goes, like, you know, getting them to like stay out of the other country's shit and like focus on their own shit, I think is like that's kind of what I was alluding to earlier when I said that to you, Prime. Like, yeah.
Okay. Counterpoints. You seem to agree.
I'm sorry.
You seem to agree that we should do all the things that reparations would be doing, right? And that do all the things that you would sue for in some sort of a case, except for actually the part where people ask for those things. So.
Well, I don't. Yeah, this is. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm done. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I think this is just a concept of like how we conceptualize force. Maybe this is like an American knee-jerk reaction. So the only reason why courts or laws have authority is because they have the capacity to be enforced. Dave Chappelle had a really fucking funny joke where he was pretending to be like Black George Bush. and like the UN told him like not to do something, and he was like, "You in what army, motherfucker?" And then like that was like pretty much the fucking joke. Is like the UN is fucking.
You ain't got no army.
Yeah. What now, bitch? Like that's pretty much the joke. So, yeah. So if the UN comes back and they say like, hey, listen, America, you're the most technologically developed. Per capita, you produce the most pollution. All these countries are fucked because of pollution. Basically, we're going to hold you accountable. Then it's just going to be like a bunch of finger pointing. We're going to say, but China in the past 40 years has polluted more than we have, and it's not fair. And and it's gonna boil down into this like legalistic gaggle fuck that's only going to benefit lawyers. And there's no ability to enforce any of these rulings. So basically, what I would say is you have to sell it to Americans as the world is fucked up. It's going to be more fucked up unless we do something about it. These technologies will help improve people. And also on top of that, sell it to their xenophobia. Fucking Joe Lewis fucking is trying to kill xenophobia. I don't think you're going to be able to. Basically say, hey, we need to give fucking Bangladeshis fucking nuclear power plants, or else their entire fucking country is going to move into your neighborhood. And you'll see fucking white people fucking paying out the ass for that shit. They'll be like, fuck that. Give them the nukes. Give them the fucking nukes.
Well, we tried that for the blacks, but we just created gated communities instead. What are we supposed to do?
Wait. Yeah, we should give like black people reparations, and white people were like, nope, we're gonna run away. Like,
We were
fascists
going
won
to
at the end of the
insulate.
day.
Like
They got the
you thought we were segregated before. We're just going to segregate even more. But not to mean a little too close to the sun there.
Hey,
When it comes
listen,
to
the gate code, Joe, is 1234. Okay, don't tell my neighbors.
Okay. They haven't changed it since 1990, so it'll be all right.
Real talk, Connor. Like, I'm very uncomfortable weaponizing xenophobia, like in any regard. Mostly just because, like, if you can tell me, if you can like look at me and say, yes, I will contain all the xenophobia specifically for the good shit, and we're not gonna have any external factors when we have like the white hippie dippy like gated communities, then like maybe. But like I've never seen any of that shit like coalesce. So like I'm just like I'm sorry, but I'm unconvinced.
Listen. You just. Sorry, Joe. I'll be really quick.
Okay.
Listen,
okay.
you just have to use dog whistles. That way, the nice white people like me feel good about it, and the bad white people who are like, oh yeah, we're gonna keep the Browns
Like
out.
Maddie.
They hear the dog whistles. Okay.
Oh,
yeah, exactly. So you
Yeah.
gotta play the game. Yeah.
No,
You're the one-
exacerbating racism is
yeah,
like the play here.
Yeah. So like, okay. So hear me out.
Obama
So-
brought back
I use-
racism.
I use
Oh,
climate to fight
my
that climate. Like,
Something
all
that we
right,
should
man,
do.
how many
Right.
people are out of existence with this shit? Like, please stop. Like,
Something that I think we should do, and this requires a collaboration with a lot of fucking countries. I understand it's not an attractive policy prescription, but it's something I think we got to consider. I really think there needs to be some type of unified civil rights for refugees, and especially climate refugees. What that looks like in practice is that I don't think that, for me, and this might be a moral thing, and I hate morals. Like, I don't think it's necessarily fair to penalize individuals who are coming from areas that are quite literally inhabitable trying to find better conditions elsewhere. Like, again, like going back to the example that I gave earlier, like it's pretty ridiculous how much xenophobia was happening with just refugees from like Costa Rica, Honduras, and Nicaragua in terms of them migrating up north. And everyone's like, there's a caravan of people again. And it's like, yeah, Tucker, you dumb fuck, because there were 2 hurricanes in the span of a week. Are you gonna, like, they're literally move 5 heading, and now you're upset that they're move 5 heading. So like, what the fuck do you want them to do? Oh, I know what you want them to do, but you'll never say it on air. Like that type of shit, you know? I think there needs to be like a unified effort in understanding that, like, for some individual, and it's a short-term thing, but I think it should be long-term, that these individuals are going to end up being displaced in certain regions, and we have to make sure that their conditions are met. Period.
Layman, I might start moving on after that.
Yeah, Joe, I would love that. Like, if that was possible. My problem is, like, the world right now, especially since the Syrian refugee crisis, which it sounds like that's an analogy to, because I would support the Syrian refugee crisis. Like I supported Canada bringing them in, and I would love, and I think the U.S. should bring them in too. My problem is that like globally, I'm worried that this will make a lot of other countries' situations worse when we're talking about a global issue, given how much right-wing populism is brewing up globally. How that would look for those countries, that fucking concerns the shit out of me. So, what would you say to that with that solution? Because I would love it if it could work, but I'm worried about that shit, you know?
Yeah, like it's honestly, I think that a lot of here we go, gonna end up on bad American takes. I think the idea of populism going across the world is a little bit of a lefty dog whistle. And I think something that we have to do is objectively look at the situations from each country and what they're actually dealing with, right? So one thing
Mhm.
that More Perfect Union is saying, because I guess he just graduated kindergarten and learned how to type on the internet, is saying, no, Joe, that wasn't it. It's because Biden said, if you can get here, you can stay. Hey, let's play a fucking trivia question. When was the fucking hurricane? And where do you think they were going to go after getting hit by a hurricane? They're going fucking north, my dude. And what's fucking north? The United States of America. So
Mm.
while I understand that there's like a good idea of like, oh, Joe Biden, he's saying all these bad things to let these immigrants, like, shut the fuck up, man. Like, listen, I understand the only you sniff is everything but a vagina, but you got to start creating better takes on that shit.
Wow.
Like, I'm just getting tired. I'm getting tired of people just blaming Biden for shit when it comes to immigration. When in reality, it's like these things are way more complicated than that. Like, so as an example for the refugee crisis, right? It's that like this is going to happen no matter you like it or not. So every single country is going to deal with it in a different way, and something that we have to do is look at it objectively from country to country. So which is why I argue for refugees of Costa Rica, Honduras, and Nicaragua, wherever they end up, they have to make sure that their needs are met.
When you
So-
say, I'm sorry to cut in really bad.
Or
So when
other
you say,
genitals, right? You don't like some people sniff whatever you want, but anyway.
yeah, no worries. I just want to clarify, by the way,
Sniff
I
all the
don't
genitals.
no.
Sorry.
When I say, when
If they give you permission first.
yeah, with
With
informed
permission.
consent, sure, I'll
Mhm.
sniff all the genitals. So,
There you go.
anyways, yeah,
There you go.
so, there we go. Joe, okay, so I want to just confirm that like all the shit that like I don't know who the fuck that senator or whatever said, like that's not my position. So I just want to
I know, I was
confirm
making
that.
sure. I was just responding to two things at once, you know.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay.
I'm doing that
I
thing.
think-
I had chat open. I'm fucking up.
Impossible.
Okay.
Never have chat open, kids.
Yeah, never have chat open ever. So yeah, I don't even remember what the fuck I was gonna say now because we talked about sniffing cocks and vaginas.
Damn.
Climate refugees, right wing populism.
I'm a refugee. Yeah. What do you mean by so when you said it's like a lefty dog whistle? I don't think it's a lefty dog
It's
whistle. I think
overconflated. It's overconflated.
You mean you're saying that it's overblown, right?
100%.
Okay, why? From what I've looked at, it seems pretty serious.
Where'd you look?
It's been a while. I don't have the citations. I didn't expect
Well,
to
that's the
bring
point.
this up.
That's the thing. I like again.
Just so you know, I didn't just listen to a bunch of like screaming fucking
like,
lunatics on Twitter when I came up with that.
So we have to look at each individual country to figure out what the problems are objectively. And the reason why I say it's generally speaking a lefty dog whistle is that when we start looking at the countries objectively, it's going to manifest itself in different ways. Like the way that populism and nationalism looks, and for example, in Palestine, is going to look totally different than
That's
it looks
no
like in the
nationalism,
United States. So a way that you can look at that, right, to really pin this down, right, the threat of white nationalism is on a totally different level of in terms of threat of people when we look at the people of Palestine. Right, these two things are not comparable.
No, I
And-
agree. I
and
agree.
while-
Well, one
but
of them
the
is
thing is what people love to do, especially on the left. And I'm not saying you're doing this. I'm just speaking very, very
I
generally
don't.
here.
Just so you know, I don't listen to any of the lefties on this. shit.
Yeah, no.
So
Anyway,
so
hold
hold
on.
on. We gotta.
Yeah. To circle it back to like the idea of like the climate situation and like while I understand that there are going to be cultural differences from each individual region as they migrate into these areas, we have to understand that they're doing this to no fault of their own. Like it's because of the
Yeah.
conditions that their area are literally inhabitable.
Okay, so that's what
for
that's what I wanted to ask you further about is so you alluded to it being like an inevitable thing that is going to happen. So now if that's the situation then I will be on board with this totally if this is something that will happen. So if they're going to migrate anyway, then I'm on board with the refugee shit. Like 100%.
Yeah, I would argue that like if I'm an individual coming from a country that I'm just gonna keep using Honduras as an example because I literally have people who've lived in this house who are from this area, like from that
Agent
area, I
might
should
fight
say.
you on that.
Um, is that like these are individuals that somehow found it here, and there's nothing really we can do about it. Something that I think is really important for Americans, right? For what America could do is making sure that the asylum process and the asylum application process is incredibly easy given the situation that they're going through. Because one thing
Okay,
that
I'm sorry I keep
Yeah.
interrupting you, but I have to.
Oh boy,
So
we're gonna have to hurry up, guys. We have to hurry up. So make whatever.
Okay,
make it quick.
sorry. Okay, so now I'm a little confused because I thought that when are you talking about they're going to immigrate normally, or are you talking about they are going to immigrate to a vastly higher degree because of the shit that's going on because of climate change? Is that what you're saying?
They're going to immigrate fastly to a higher degree, and not in a way that a lot of immigration lawyers would recommend them doing. One of the things that immigration lawyers from the top down say, the last thing you want to do is ask for asylum at the border because the United States government will bend you down. And which is why one of the things that they strongly recommend you doing is entering the port through legal means. So that means like going to like actually having quote unquote papers and then flying there. The problem is that how are you supposed to fly to a country that's got when your infrastructure got destroyed by 2 hurricanes? You can't really fly there anymore. So
Right.
there's like other things that have to happen, and something that the United States government doesn't have a good track record is treating individuals who are seeking asylum at the border in a just and fair manner. Something that they've obviously seen is trying to stop them before they even get there in the first place, doing things that are very legally and morally ambiguous, like saying you gotta seek asylum in every other country that you cross over. It's like, oh, okay, word, we crossed over a couple countries now. Is this retroactive or proactive, my friend? And like little shit like that.
But okay, but this is what I was getting at when I was talking about like this right-wing popular wing, because I think that that's important. Definitely going to happen. It is something that I think everybody should like get in collaboration with the UN with and figure out a fucking plan in order to disperse these refugees relative to like as many possible countries as they can, so like a reasonable amount is being taken in and integrated in the population as best they can, even though that's inevitably going to be fucking messy. I totally understand that take. So
Right. And
I think I agree with it, but gotta be
even a
careful as
collaborative
well.
effort, right? A collaborative effort could be good as well, right? If the United States is helping these countries to make sure that these individuals, when they enter in, are taken care of, that's something that the United States could totally do. And the thing, like in terms of like just international, just government shit, when the United States wants to do something internationally, they'll find a way.